Thank you. I see everybody on the screen. I understand Vice Chair Schaefer's having a little difficulty with this technology, but why don't we go ahead and get started, because I see my controller on, and I know she's got other meetings to attend as well. So with that, good morning all. If we can have Ms. Taylor. Is Ms. Taylor on the line?
I am. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. If you could please call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez.
Present.
Vice Chair Schaefer. Member Gaines.
Present.
Member Cohen.
Good morning. Present.
Morning. Controller Yee.
Here.
Members, I believe Vice Chair Schaefer might be on now. Do I see a screen open here? There he is. Okay. So with that, we do have a quorum present, and the board meeting is called to order. We will start with our Pledge of Allegiance, if I can get you all to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, members, I just want to once again remind you all for your patience, and especially those that may be joining us throughout this meeting, that we are all sharing this one line simultaneously. So sometimes it's very difficult for staff to distinguish who's speaking. So we appreciate your patience, and also for your announcing your name and as we recognize those that are speaking, so the transcriptionists could make sure that they're transcribing who's speaking at what time, especially on motions and seconds. And as before we get going, I see I was going to invite members if they have any opening remarks, and I see a hand already up from Member Gaines. Member Gaines, go ahead.
If I could I'd like to just do a recognition at the beginning of the meeting here.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Colin Powell, who passed away yesterday at the age of 84. General Powell was a groundbreaking African-American statesman who ascended to the heights of government as Secretary of State. He served our country for decades in the United States Army with many staff and command positions, ending his tenure as a four-star general. Powell ultimately rose to become chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest military position in the Department of Defense. His was a life filled to help and protect others. And his list of awards and recognitions for his service pays great tribute to his talents and dedication. He was the recipient of 2 Presidential Medals of Freedom, the Congressional Gold Medal, and the Ronald Reagan Freedom Award, and many, many others. He leaves behind a wife and 3 children and a lasting imprint on this country and the world. God bless Colin Powell, his friends and family, and the many lives he touched during his long and distinguished career. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know many of us would join you on that. He was a very accomplished public servant, and he did a lot. And like you mentioned, he did it actually for both houses and for both administrations, both the Republican and Democrats. Very respected. With that, if there's no other hands or comments or opening remarks from the members, I will ask Ms. Taylor if she would please announce our first order of business.
Our first order of business is an announcement regarding public teleconference participation. Good morning, and thank you for joining today's Board of Equalization meeting via teleconference. Throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will primarily be in a listen-only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice and our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out the public comment submission form found on our additional information webpage in advance of today's meeting, or alternatively, participate in today's meeting by providing your public comment live. After the presentation of an item has concluded, we will begin by identifying any public comment requests that have been received by our board proceeding staff, with the AT&T operator providing directions for you to identify yourself. After all known public commenters have been called, the operator will also provide public comment instructions to the individuals participating via teleconference. Accordingly, if you intend to make a public comment today, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. When giving a public comment, please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment, please mute their line or minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And with that, if you would please call our first agenda item.
Our first agenda item is D2, Tax Program, Non-Appearance Matters, Consent, Property Tax Matters. Petitions for reassessment of unitary value. A, Gen On California South, LP, Ormond Beach, 1115. B, Indigo Generation, LLC, 1141. C, Larkspur Energy, LLC, 1142. D, U.S. Telepacific Corp., 7757. E, Extenet Systems, California, LLC, 8093. Petitions for penalty abatement on unitary value. F, Arizona Public Service Company, 0191. G, Volcano Telephone Company, 0327. H, Gen On California South, LP, Elwood, 1117. I, NTT America, Inc., 7732. J, Backbone Communications, Inc., 8031. K, PC Landing Corp., 8116. L, Ridge Communications, Inc., 8212. This is a constitutional function. Contribution disclosure forms are not required pursuant to Government Code 15626. This matter will be presented by Mr. McCool.
Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I am Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Before you today for your consideration and adoption are 5 petitions for reassessment of unitary value and 7 petitions for penalty abatement on unitary value. For all of these matters, staff and petitioners are in agreement and staff and petitioners are in agreement on the recommendations, and I ask for your adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCool. Members, do we have any questions or comments for Mr. Oh, I see a hand from our controller. Ms. G, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McCool. I don't want to, let me just ask a procedural question. If I have questions on a particular item, does that mean I have to pull it off consent to ask the question?
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez, honorable members of the board, Henry Nancho, Chief Counsel. Unfortunately, yes, these are non-appearance consent matters. So if there were questions on any or comments on the group or any of these items, it would have to be pulled off and brought back next month.
Okay. Okay, I'll follow up offline.
Any other comments or questions from any of the members? Seeing and hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt staff's recommendation?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved by our controller.
Second.
It's been seconded by member Gaines. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll on the motion.
Chairman Vasquez, I believe we should
Oh,
call
you know
for
what? Can we
public
check for
comment.
public comment? Yes, I'm sorry.
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to provide public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Once again, for public comment, please press 1, then 0. And we have no public comment at this time.
Thank you. And Ms. Taylor, you mentioned that there was no written comments, right?
Correct.
With that, if you would please call the roll on the motion.
The motion on,
A group meeting? No, that seems no.
there is a motion on the floor to adopt staff's recommendation.
They join at 1:30.
Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. And just another friendly reminder, when you're not speaking, please mute your mic. I'm hearing some feedback from others. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you please call our next item.
Our next item is F1, Other Tax Program Non-Appearance Matters, Property Tax Matters, Board Rule Changes. A, 2021 Board Roll of Private Railroad Cars. B, 2021 Board Roll of State Assessed Property. This is a constitutional function. Contribution disclosure forms are not required pursuant to Government Code Section 15626. This matter will be presented by Mr. McCool.
Good morning again, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I am Jack McCool, Chief of the State Assessed Properties Division. Before you today for your consideration and adoption are two changes to the private railroad car roll. Both changes are being recommended to correct assessee reporting errors. Also before you today for your consideration and adoption are 5 changes to the board roll of state assessed property. 3 changes are being recommended to correct errors made by staff in the allocation process. 1 change is being recommended to correct staff's failure to apply a board adopted 2020 penalty abatement adjustment to this year's assessed value. And 1 change is being recommended to correct an assessee reporting error. Thank you for your consideration, and I ask for the board's adoption of these roll changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCool. Members, do we have any procedural questions or comments for Mr. McCool? I see Vice Chair Schaefer's hand. Go ahead. But I think you're muted, though.
Thank you. I'm now unmuted.
There we go.
Yeah, Mr. McCool, do we have errors to correct every year or once in a while, or is this a rare thing?
Generally speaking, we have a handful of roll correction errors to correct most years. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody's on the line who wishes to speak?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Once again, to make public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. And we have no public comment at this time.
Thank you. With that, members, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, so moved.
It's been moved by our controller, and I will go ahead and second that. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, the motion is to adopt staff's recommendation. Chairman Vasquez,
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Controller Yee.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call our next item.
Our next item is G1, Rulemaking, Section 100 Changes, Regulations, Property Tax Rules 370 and 370.5. Staff request for approval to proceed with Section 100 changes to update Property Tax Rules 370, random selection of counties for representative sampling for calendar years other than 2016 through 2020, and 370.5, random selection of counties for survey or representative sampling for calendar years 2016 through 2020 to reflect recent statutory changes to Government Code Section 15643. This matter will be presented by Ms. Yim.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I'm Sonia Yim from the Legal Department. Today, we are recommending that the board adopt the proposed Section 100 or non-substantive changes to Property Tax Rules 370 and 370.5. The proposed amendments will make each rule consistent with current law, namely Government Code Section 15643, which provides guidance for the selection of counties and cities and counties for surveys of local assessment practices. Senate Bill 1473 recently extended the effective dates of Section 15643 by 5 years, such that it is now effective for calendar years 2016 to 2025. The proposed amendments to Rules 370 and 370.5 reflect the changes made by Senate Bill 1473 to Government Code Section 15643, so that the board's property tax rules will be consistent with these recent legislative changes. Accordingly, we request that the board adopt the proposed amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yim. Members, do we have any questions or comments for Ms. Yim? Seeing none. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with the AT&T if there's anybody on the line that wishes to speak?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your touch-tone phone. Once again, if you have a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. And we have no comments in this time.
Thank you. Just for the record, and also for those that maybe are not viewing us, but listening to us, the Controller Betty Yee has now stepped out, and now we have our deputy, Ms. Stowers, joining us. With that, members, if there's no other comments or questions, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the staff's recommendation.
Deputy Controller Stowers, good morning, everyone. I move to adopt the Section 100 changes.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Stowers, second by Member Cohen. Seeing no other hands or comments, Ms. Taylor, if you please call the roll.
Certainly. The motion on the floor is to adopt the Section 100 changes. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is J1, Administrative Consent Agenda, Approval of the board meeting minutes. The minutes of the September 21 through 22, 2021 were attached to the public agenda notice for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Members, are there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing no hands or comments. Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody's on the line who wishes to make a public comment?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who wants to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. Once again, if you have a public comment, please press 1, then 0. We have no comments at this time.
Thank you. I see Vice Chair Schaefer. Go ahead.
Chair Vasquez, I can't conceive of any public comments that somebody might want to make on something as mundane as approval of board meeting minutes. Can you?
No. But we try to be as transparent as possible here. With that, I'd like to entertain a motion by the members or a member here to adopt our minutes.
I would so move, Vice Chair.
It's been moved by our Vice Chair.
Second.
And it's been seconded by Member Gaines. Seeing no other hands or comments. Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the roll on the minutes.
Yes, the motion is to move to adopt the minutes. Chairman Vasquez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Aye.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous of all those present. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you'd please call the next item.
The next item is K1A, Executive Director's Report, Operational Priorities. Report on the status of pending and upcoming operational priorities. This matter will be presented by Ms. Renati.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today, I'll report on some of the agency's operational priorities and projects. For the last 2 years, the management team has invested and spent considerable effort to ensure that our vacant positions are filled. Since June of last year, we have filled a total of 56 positions and have reduced our overall vacancy rate from 40% to 19%. The management team has spent a great deal of time working on this important effort, and I would be remiss if I did not commend each of them for the continued actions to ensure we stay on plan. Members, the next item is an update on our process improvement project. Currently, both within the Property Tax Department and the Board Proceedings Division, managers are performing process reviews on some key operational processes to identify areas and opportunities for improvement. This work aligns with our strategic goals to modernize our property taxation system. Over the next few months, more details will be provided. Members, this concludes this portion of my presentation. I am available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Members, do we have any questions or comments? I see Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Thank you, Ms. Renati, for that excellent report. Very happy to hear that the vacancies have gone down from 40 to 19%. And that's department-wide, right?
That is, it would be entire BOE agency.
Can you talk about, or do you have any knowledge about your recruitment efforts? Is it just through CalHR, or how are you guys recruiting? How diverse is your recruitment?
Thank you, Member Stowers. We have our partners at CDTFA, our service provider, has a recruitment department, and we developed our own recruitment team at BOE, and we are using those recruitment resources as well as CalHR's through CalCareers, the recruitment fairs, through all of the different agencies that invite others to join. We're seeking out our own. We're using online platforms. we're reaching out to higher veteran organizations and all the local schools and colleges. With the ability to perform most of these recruitments online, we're able to reach out to people that live all over California, and it's been very worthwhile, and we're finding more and more interest in what we do.
Very good. I appreciate that. So looking at your workforce, is it a diverse workforce?
I would say it's diverse. We have a mixture of male and female and all the different categories of diversity. I've recently researched it and found that we are attracting a large, diverse workforce.
So are there any gaps in there that you guys need to do any targeted recruitment?
That's something we need to look into with our, and I can work closely with our workforce planning group to work on those goals for the coming year. That's something I'll work with. Our EEO officer works on those plans. So something I will work on, and we can report back to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I see another hand by Member Gaines.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ms. Renati for the improvement that we're seeing in filling those vacancies. It's just really encouraging. And I mean, it's come down dramatically since we were first elected. And since the passage of AB 102, of course, there's been a lot of challenges that we had to take on, and this was one of them. So I'm encouraged to see that we're filling these positions, and I know we're just going to get ramped up to what I think will end up being a vacancy rate that ultimately is lower than the agency average for the state of California. I think that's exciting and encouraging. And I know that the board has had a lot of ideas, a lot of work groups, ideas that we want to pursue. And it's difficult to do when we don't have full staffing. So it's encouraging to see as we are hiring more people that we're kind of fully complemented as an agency. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words and the board's guidance and leadership on this issue.
Thank you. And thank you again, Mr. Nadi and your team. Excellent job. With that, members, if there's no other comments or questions, let me ask Ms. Taylor if she would call the next item.
Yes. The next item is K1B, Executive Director's Report, Proposition 19 Implementation Project, report on the status of the agency's Proposition 19 Implementation Project, including requesting board authorization for further actions related to legislative developments. This item has 7 sub-items as indicated on the agenda. This matter will be presented by Ms. Renati.
Good morning. Again, this is Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today, attached to the public agenda is a high-level implementation plan. This plan includes 7 identified work categories needed to implement Proposition 19 and a high-level description of associated activities within each category. I'm happy to report the status of our Prop 19 implementation project is green, which means we have no issues or concerns to report. Next, each team leader will provide you with a report on the activities completed to date and additional information regarding the implementation actions for their sections. The first report will be provided by Ms. Patty Lumsden, Chief of the County Assessed Properties Division, who will provide a report on the department's implementation actions, including updates on guidance. Ms. Lumsden.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Renati. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable board members. My name is Patty Lumsden. I'm Chief of the County Assessed Properties Division, and today I will be giving you an update of the Property Tax Department's portion of the Proposition 19 implementation project. Staff continues to answer inquiries from taxpayers, assessors, and their staff, and other stakeholders regarding Proposition 19. And we have recently noticed with the passing of Senate Bill 539, we've received an increase in inquiries again. Probably about 90% of our inquiries are related to Proposition 19 at this time. For guidance, with the recent passing again of Senate Bill 539, Staff is working on drafting guidance on those new provisions. And in addition to that, we are reviewing our property tax forms that have to do with Proposition 19 to look for any issues regarding compliance with this new legislation. And as far as tracking system, staff has completed the development of the system to track the 3-time limit for base year value transfers for seniors and disabled persons. Guidance and instructions on how to report have already been sent to county assessors and their staff through a county assessors only letter. And it is now up and running, and we have already been receiving initial Prop 19 reports from the counties. And we would like to acknowledge staff's hard work and our partners at CDTFA, specifically TSD, for their tremendous efforts in getting the system completed and up and running. And finally, I would like to provide you with some training information. So staff recently partnered with San Luis Obispo County Assessor staff to co-present a CASA webinar on Proposition 19 base year value transfers. CASA, which is the California Assessors Administrative Services Association, is an affiliate of the California Assessors Association. This webinar was well received with over 1,000 attendees consisting of BOE staff and county assessors and their staff. And that concludes my report, and I'm available to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Members, are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, I will let you continue. Ms. Lumpson, or are you going to pass it back to Ms. Renati?
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. I'll pass it on to Ms. Renati. Thank you.
Members, the next report will be provided by Chief Counsel Henry Nanjo, who will provide a report on the legal department's implementation actions. Mr. Nanjo.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I'm Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel of the BOE's Legal Department, and we are continuing to provide legal support to our other departments and working diligently on the board's 2 Proposition 19 related rulemaking efforts. At this time, I'll provide a brief recapitulation and overview of the status of each rulemaking effort. The first rule is Rule 462.520, Exclusion from Change in Ownership, Intergenerational Transfers. As the board remembers, at the July board meeting, the board adopted Property Tax Rule 462.520 as published in Letters to Assessors number 2021/028, dated July 2nd, 2021. Staff completed and submitted the final rulemaking package to the Office of Administrative Law on August 6, 2021 for a 30-day working day review. Staff also followed up with the Office of Administrative Law once the Department of Finance provided sign-off on the board's economic and fiscal impact statements within the regulatory package. On Wednesday, September 15th, 2021, OAL reached out about some technical adjustments to our package. Staff continues to work through these questions with the OAL. Note, typically the file review time for OAL is 30 working days, but under COVID-19 executive orders, OAL can extend the review period up to 120 days. We have been recently notified that OAL has decided to exercise that extended review period on this file as of end of September 2021. However, we have had some very positive communications with the OAL attorney who is reviewing our package, and we believe that we should be able to get that wrapped up and are looking forward to OAL's approval very soon, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We will continue to provide you with any status updates or developments on this rule, but assuming that we do get approval within the next 2 to 3 weeks, that will still keep us on track to have this rule published and implemented as of January 1st, 2022. On Rule 462.540, the other rule, Exclusion from Change in Ownership Base Year Value Transfers, as the board may remember, at the August board meeting, the board adopted Property Tax Rule 462.540 as published in Letters to Assessors number 2021/027, dated also July 2nd, 2021. Staff submitted the economic and fiscal impact statements and attachments to the Department of Finance on September 8th, 2021, and received Department of Finance sign-off on September 14th, 2021. Staff completed and submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, or OAL, the final rulemaking package on September 23rd, 2021 for their 30 working day review. On this rule, they have not yet extended the 30 working day rule, so we are hopeful that we will get an approval shortly. We also likewise have not gotten any further inquiries or technical questions about this package. We will continue to keep you updated as to any developments on the status of this rule as well. I'd like to thank my regulatory legal team, including support staff, who've been very diligent working with OAL to try to work through both these rules. And I'm available to answer any questions if the board members have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions or comments for either of our last two speakers? Seeing and hearing none. Oh, I see Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. I just want to say thank you to Chief Counsel, Mr. Najo, for that very detailed report and following through on the rulemaking process for both base year transfers and intergenerations. That's it.
Thank you, Deputy Controller.
Thank you. With that, members, if there's no other comments or questions, Ms. Renati, you can please continue.
Thank you.
The next report will be provided by Mr. Dustin Weatherby, Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. He will provide an update on legislation related to the implementation of Prop 19. Mr. Weatherby.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. So good morning, Chair Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, and honorable members of the board. This is Dustin Weatherby. I'm Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. Today, I will provide you with an update on legislation related to the implementation of Proposition 19. We tracked Senate Bill 539 and Assembly Constitutional Amendment 9 through the first year of the legislative session. Senate Bill 539, introduced by Senator Hertzberg, is a property taxation bill regarding intergenerational transfers of real property and base year value transfers. A complete analysis of the SB 539 provisions is posted on the BOE's website. So Senate Bill 539 addresses several areas of the intergenerational transfer provisions, provides the BOE the authority for emergency rulemaking, and addresses the definitions of what constitutes a family farm. In addition, SB 539 broadened the scope of the measure to include victims of wildfires and natural disasters. The bill was signed by the governor on September 30th and was chaptered by the Secretary of State, Chapter 427. SB 539's provisions are now in effect. So the next bill is ACA 9, introduced by Assemblymember Kevin Kiley. ACA 9 seeks to repeal several provisions of Proposition 19 regarding the intergenerational base year value transfer exemptions, and instead reinstates the prior rule. ACA 9 would apply retroactively to all effective purchases or transfers occurring on or after February 16, 2021. ACA 9 did not receive any legislative action this year and is eligible to be heard in January 2022 when the legislature reconvenes from the interim recess. So I will continue to monitor any legislation, including proposed initiatives regarding Proposition 19, and will report back to the board with any new updates. Members, this concludes my report. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherby. Members, do we have any comments or questions regarding the Prop 19 legislation implementation actions? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Renati, if you would please continue.
Thank you. The next report will be provided by BOE's Chief Communications Officer, Peter Kim, who will provide a report on the Communications Department's implementation actions. Mr. Kim.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. This is Peter Kim, the agency's Chief Communications Officer. Members, today I'll provide a brief report on the Communications Department's efforts in implementing Proposition 19. I'm continuing to collaborate with our taxpayers' rights advocate, Lisa Thompson, to explore additional ways in communicating with taxpayers. The Proposition 19 webpage is being updated and enhanced to provide the latest information in real time for taxpayers. The Taxpayers' Rights Advocate and I have started the process to update the existing Proposition 19 resources on our website as Senate Bill 539 has been signed into law. As of yesterday, we received a total of approximately 225,809 unique external page views since November 10, 2020. Since last month's board meeting, that's an additional 13,550 unique external page views, which is about the same from last month. Finally, we're continuing to use our social media channels such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to expand our audience and direct followers to the BOE website for the latest updates and resources. This concludes my report, and I'm available to answer any questions the board may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. I believe there's a hand from Member Gaines.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Kim. Appreciate the presentation. And I just wanted to reiterate what we had discussed with both you and Ms. Thompson. My hope would be that we would just continue to use our taxpayer rights advocate and make sure we're promoting that to our constituents. I just feel that not that many folks know about it, and if they've got an issue, we want to hear about it. Now, obviously, those constituents can talk to their local county assessor, but I don't think that many of our constituents know that there is another option that's available to them. And I offer it when I talk to constituents. We include it in our newsletter. But I just wanted to thank you. I know that you and Ms. Thompson are working together to see if there's ways that we can project that out more as the Board of Equalization to provide that service to our constituents. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Gaines, for your comments, and it's been duly noted. And I have actually had a brief discussion with Ms. Thompson after our pre-briefing yesterday, and we will continue to find and work ways to communicate on the resources available. So thank you for that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Renati, if you would please continue.
The next report will be provided by Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Ms. Lisa Thompson, who will provide a report on the implementation actions of the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate's Office. Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable board members. I'm Lisa Thompson, the agency's Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office and Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I am pleased to report on the Proposition 19 implementation and action plans for the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. Our office implementation plan is focused on updating its existing informational sheets on exclusions and base year value transfers affected by Proposition 19, and also to develop new information sheets for the intergenerational transfers and for the base year value transfers under Proposition 19, as well as addressing them for current law along with the prior law. We want to ensure that each exclusion is representative, since taxpayers will be still claiming some, or assessors will be evaluating them. So as far as covering additional exclusion and base year value transfer topics, we will be drafting new information sheets addressing family farms, as well as property that is impacted by a disaster. At this time, our office is reviewing language in the Proposition 19's implementation legislation resulting from Senate Bill 539 that was signed by the governor on September 30th. We continue to monitor progress for approval of property tax rules addressing the intergenerational transfers and base year value transfers of Proposition 19. We are considering how best to present the information in the taxpayers' information sheets, so taxpayers are aware of property tax savings that may be available to them under current law, as well as understand the prior law.
It is important that taxpayers understand that events that may have occurred prior to the effective dates of the implementing legislations and Proposition 19 continue to be applied for and processed by County Assessor's Office. So we want to make sure that taxpayers, particularly in the event of inherited properties, are aware of change in ownerships events that occur prior to the February 16th date, and they can still apply for them. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office has continued to collaborate with the Communications Officer, Peter Kim, on various aspects of Proposition 19 to ensure taxpayers are provided the most current information as well as to keep informed. That includes my update for the TRA Office Implementation Plan. And I can actually continue to the next update if you'd like.
Sure, but I see a hand up from Member Gaines. Member Gaines, you want to ask a question first?
Yeah, I just thank you for that update, and also just wanted to reiterate the ag issue with our farmers and ranchers. It sounds like that issue on a per parcel basis was, I think, resolved in the legislature, is my understanding, but I don't know if you had any more information that you might be able to provide on that, but I had heard that the issue was resolved and that it was creating problems for family farmers who wanted to pass property on to the next generation, and they were looking for clarity as to whether it applied on a per parcel basis.
Right, so thank you. That is an important issue, and that will be a key point that we identify in our information sheets so taxpayers understand that. So
yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you.
Right. So if there aren't any other questions, I'll go ahead and continue with the next update. And that is to report on the Proposition 19 Implementation and Action Plan for Education and Outreach. The focus of the education and outreach implementation actions are for the creation of a Proposition 19 fact sheet, presentation materials, and well as to assess the need for additional educational materials. As I have indicated in prior meetings, earlier this year, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate, in collaboration with the Communications Officer, created a Proposition 19 fact sheet and a PowerPoint presentation. And that fact sheet and presentation provided information on the intergenerational transfers, exclusion, and base year value for senior and disabled persons, which were effective April 1st, 2021 for the base year value, and of course, February 16th for intergenerational transfers. Now that implementing legislation has been signed into law as a result of the governor signing Senate Bill 539 on September 30th, the Communications Officer and I are working together to update the fact sheet. And after the fact sheet is done, we will go ahead and update the PowerPoint presentation. We are awaiting approval for the agency's property tax rules from the Office of Administrative Law, and the Communications Officer, Peter Kim, and I will continue to review information on our agency's websites concerning the recently chaptered implementing statute and collaborate on how best to present the information in the fact sheet. Since the passage of Proposition 19, we have monitored progress for guidance issued by our agency out of the Property Tax Department largely, and feel that the information disseminated has been comprehensive and responsive to the needs of taxpayers as well as county assessors. So we do believe at the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office that it is important that taxpayers have information available to them as soon as possible about the effects of Proposition 19, and that is easy to understand. So we continue to monitor progress in that regard. And then later in the agenda, I will be providing an update on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office, providing some statistics on the number of taxpayers that we assisted as part of item K1. So this concludes my update for the Education and Outreach Implementation Plan. I'm available for any questions in that regard.
Thank you. I just have a quick one, and it kind of dubs into both the outreach as well as your first opening remarks. And I was just wondering, now that we're starting to see it roll out, the Prop 19, the implementation of it, are we receiving or hearing more questions or comments that we maybe didn't anticipate? Especially, I'm thinking as people who have lost their loved ones during this COVID and now are trying to make those adjustments or understand the implementation of Prop 19 as they inherit properties.
Yes, so we, much like the property tax department, we continue to get contacts from taxpayers. It's in a different vein. I mean, before it was more of questions, concerns about certain transactions, but now they have applied. They're in the process of applying for those base year value transfers, or in the case of inherited property, the parent-child transfer or grandparent-child transfer. So now we're getting to the point of explaining and kind of looking into more of if they receive a denial letter from the assessor's office, then we would look into the circumstances of that specific taxpayer's transactions and ensure that the denial was correct. So we do have to do that and evaluate again whether which law the transaction actually applies to. Depending on the situation, it could have been that if a parent had died previously, the change in ownership event actually goes with the date of death and not the date of distribution. So in many cases, some of the properties, such as rental properties, could benefit from the parent-child transfer if that's the case. So we just work with the taxpayer and coordinate with assessors' offices to ensure that they were treated fairly according to the law and provide them information in regard to that analysis. So thank you for that question.
No, thank you, because I think a lot of folks that have been calling me, I don't think really understood Prop 19, but now that they're in the mix of it, especially when they've lost a loved one here and they find out the inheritance, and they don't, as they start reading into the fine detail, they're realizing that it's not working in their favor. But,
right. If they have all the kind of necessary knowledge and early enough, now even if, say, a principal residence property was inherited and, they didn't originally plan to move into it because of the requirement now that it remain a principal resident, they have ample time to make that, decision and decide if they want to do that. So.
Actually, to that point, is there like a window? Do they have to do it within a year, or is there a deadline on that to move in?
It talks about a year. You have to apply for, within the year as would be the homeowner's exemption. So the assumption would be yes, you would move into it within a year. But that's a personal decision a taxpayer has to make. But by making sure they're aware of that, possibility, then it could save them, quite a bit of property tax savings and continue to keep the house as opposed to maybe selling it and going from there. So we'll try to best provide that information to the taxpayers. But thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Members, any other comments or questions of Ms. Thompson on her presentations? Seeing and hearing none. Ms. Taylor, can we check and see if there's any assessors on the line who may want to weigh in on this Prop 19 implementation, these sub-items that we just discussed?
Certainly. AT&T operator, can you let us know if there are any assessors on the line that would like to comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're an assessor and you'd like to make a comment, please press 1 then 0 on your telephone at this time. And we have no comments at this time.
All right.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, we didn't have any written comments on this, did we?
We do not have any written comments.
can we just check with AT&T if there's anybody in the public who wishes to speak before we move on to the next item?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no public comment at this time.
Thank you. With that, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call our next item.
The next item is K2A, Chief Counsel's Report, Legal Workload Quarterly Report. General discussion on the legal department's workload over the last 3 months. This matter will be presented by Mr. Nanjo.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Good morning again, Chairman Vasquez, honorable members of the board, Henry Nancho, Chief Counsel. Providing my report on the third quarter of 2021 legal department activities. I'm pleased to say our legal staff has welcomed a new tax counsel, Mr. David Lujan, who joined us in September of 2021. On a telework note, due to COVID-19, the legal department continues to primarily telework in the fourth quarter of 2021. Staff are coming in to support the essential activities of disclosure, litigation, and legal communications. The legal department also continues to provide support to the board, the executive office, the property tax department, and our stakeholders while teleworking. In the area of Proposition 19 projects, as you know, our attorneys are actively in the process of preparing and developing guidance and rulemaking to implement Proposition 19. Both property tax rules 462.520 and 462.540 are currently undergoing review at the Office of Administrative Law as previously reported. We are coordinating with the Property Tax Department to determine additional areas for future guidance. In the regular workload area, the legal department continues its regular workload. In the area of public act requests, in the third quarter of 2021, we completed 69 inquiries. 2 are currently pending, including recent requests. Requests from the public are expected to come in primarily at the same rate in the fourth quarter of 2021. In the area of administration, support of Board Proceedings Division and Executive Office, in the third quarter, we completed 7 assignments, and there are 4 currently pending in this quarter. In the area of publications review, in the third quarter, we had 36 completed assignments, and there is 1 currently pending this quarter. As board members know, the big event or actions for the legal department at this time is the appeals. The state assessed appeal season has started, and the legal department has assigned 2 attorneys as state assessed appeals attorneys. They provide a neutral arbiter position, and the attorneys are designated to handle responsibilities formerly handled by the appeals division. These responsibilities include verifying that petitions are correctly filed, advising Board Proceedings Division on filing and scheduling, researching appeals issues, and preparing for and holding appeals conferences, then drafting summary decisions and hearing summaries, and the publication of Section 40 decisions. The other attorneys are representing the state assessed properties tax division in the state assessed appeals. These responsibilities include consulting with the state assessed properties tax division, researching issues, drafting analysis, filing documents with the Board Proceedings Division, and preparing for and attending appeals conferences. In the area of regulations, this quarter we collaborated with the County Assessed Properties Tax Division to work on the regulatory implementation of Senate Bill 1473, which relates to the selection of random counties and cities and counties for surveys of assessment practices. Based upon this collaborative review, the legal department proposed amendments to Property Tax 370 and 370.5 earlier today, which Ms. Yim reported on. This will reflect the changes required by Government Code Section 15643. The proposed changes will make our rules consistent with the statutory changes passed by the legislature in Senate Bill 1473 as a Section 100 or non-substantive change. With the board's authorization of these amendments earlier in this meeting, the legal department will file the regulatory packages for these changes with the Office of Administrative Law. The legal department is continuing to review recent statutory changes in existing regulations for future regulatory packages. Excuse me. In the area of property tax technical inquiries, in the third quarter of 2021, we completed 14 email requests, 3 letters or memos, 27 phone call inquiries, and 1 special project. Currently in the fourth quarter, we are still handling 35 additional email inquiries, 27 letters and memo requests, 15 phone calls, and 2 special projects. And finally, in the area of litigation, as noted in our litigation roster, things have been pretty stable. The item of note in the last quarter was BOE was incorrectly named in an action filed last quarter. This case, the Runecraft versus Chevron Corporation case, related to a sales tax collection matter and should have named CDTFA instead of BOE. On July 7th, 2021, the BOE was dismissed as a defendant to this action and CDTFA was properly substituted. I want to thank our litigation attorneys and team for prompt action in getting that done. Finally, in the area of presentations, the California Lawyers Association, which is the tax section of the state bar, California Lawyers Association or sections, is doing a physical conference at the end of this year or toward the end of this year on November 3rd through 5th. Mr. Richard Moon will be presenting on a panel regarding Proposition 19, and I will be participating at that conference in a Chief Counsel roundtable with the Chief Counsels of FTB, CDTFA, and OTA as well. We are welcoming getting together in person at a physical conference and again meeting our colleagues and providing information to the public. In closing, I want to thank my team for their continued efforts with Proposition 19 implementation, the state assessed appeals season, and continuing to juggle all the assignments that we have and chipping away at our backlog. Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board, that concludes my quarterly report. I am happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I see 2 hands. Let me start with Member Gaines, and then we'll go to Vice Chair Schaefer.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Nanjar. I appreciate your presentation. I just had a question where you had mentioned that we were named in a lawsuit, I guess incorrectly, and you were able to negotiate that the BOE be pulled out of that. Can you give me just an idea? Because this happens, I think, often where, all parties are named in litigation, and if they're not involved, then you end up spending money for legal fees. So I'm just trying to get a handle on how much it would have cost in terms of legal fees if we were still remaining in that particular lawsuit.
Thank you for the question, Member Gaines. It kind of varies, to answer your question directly, depending on the number of parties and the issues involved. In the Runecraft case, we were able to get ourselves out very early in the case, which is typically what we try to strive for. As you may know, a lot of the public and even attorneys out there haven't realized the change that occurred in July 2017 after AB 102, which split up the BOE. So a lot of times as a matter of default, or they have old records from their file that indicate BOE was the one who collected the sales tax, they automatically name the Board of Equalization. But that being said, we try to maintain good relations with the attorney population, if we will, and through conferences like this tax policy conference, we can get the word out. BOE does property tax. For all the other taxes, aside from alcohol and insurance, you need to go to other state agencies. And the word is getting out, I'm happy to report.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you for your question.
Thank you. Vice Chair Schaefer, yes, go ahead. I think you're muted though. Unmute your mic.
Yeah. Henry, it's good that you're able to meet up with counsel from other agencies and whatnot. We rarely get to do that nowadays, and I think that's a good plus. And I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. We try to keep in communication with our colleagues and support each other. So I appreciate the comment from yourself. Thank you, sir.
I see another hand from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Thank you, Mr. Nangel. Me too. I'm very happy that you are communicating with other attorneys. I'm looking forward to hear your presentation at the Chief Counsel at the Tax Policy Conference and Mr. Moon's presentation as well. I invite you to their luncheon. You can hear me speak about tax issues as it relates to Board of Equalization, Franchise Tax Board, and the State Controller's Office. So see you guys on that Friday.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, do we have any comments or questions from the public on his presentation, the legal department's report?
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez. We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, 0 on your touch-tone phone. Once again, if you have public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no public comments at this time.
Thank you. With that, if there's no other further discussion, Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the next item.
The next item is K4A, Legislative Research and Statistic Division Chief's Report, Update on Legislative Issues, Update on Administrative and Program-Related Legislative Bills Impacting the BOE. This matter will be presented by Mr. Weatherby.
So good morning again, board members. Dustin Weatherby, Chief of the Legislative Research and Statistics Division. Today, attached to the public agenda notice, I provided you with a legislative report, which includes a list of legislation that impacts the BOE and details actions taken in the first year of the 2-year legislative session. The legislature will reconvene January 3rd, 2022 to begin the second year of the 2021-2022 legislative session. Additionally, the governor's last day to sign or veto any bills on his desk was last Sunday on October 10th. So the first bill I want to highlight for you is Senate Bill 825, authored by the Senate Governance and Finance Committee. Senate Bill 825 contains the 3 board-sponsored legislative proposals approved by the board at the December 2020 and February 2021 board meetings. To briefly recap the sponsored provisions SB 825 has, it first amends Revenue and Taxation Code Section 401.10 to extend the sunset date for valuation of intercounty pipeline rights-of-way for 5 years until January 1st, 2027. And amends RTC Section 1752.2 related to Multi-Jurisdictional Assessment Appeals Board, and amends RTC Section 214.02 to extend the sunset date of the welfare exemption for land conservancies and land trusts until January 1st, 2028. The bill was signed by the governor on September 30th and chaptered by the Secretary of State, and that's Chapter 433. And the bill's provisions will go into effect January 1st, 2022. Board members, the last bill I want to highlight is Senate Bill 303 by Senator Borges. Senate Bill 303 extended the 5-year time period for base year value transfers for substantially damaged or destroyed property by 2 years if the last date of transfer the base year value occurred on or after March 4th, 2020, but on or before the COVID-19 emergency termination date or March 4th, 2022, whichever of those final 2 dates is the earliest. The bill also extended the 2-year extension if a property was substantially damaged or destroyed if it occurred during the same time period as I just mentioned before. The bill's provisions are applicable to base year values for the 2015-16 fiscal year and any fiscal years thereafter. The bill was signed by the governor on October 5th and chaptered by the Secretary of State, Chapter 540, and the bill's provisions are now in effect. Members, this will conclude my report. I'm available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherby. If there's no, oh, I see one hand from Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. This is more of a process question. I appreciate you updating us on the bills that we're currently tracking, but I'm just curious, are you guys, you and program staff, looking at any future legislation that needs to be introduced this January, February, as it affects the BOE programs, the programs that we are constitutionally responsible for, including the alcohol and beverage tax program?
Thank you for that question, Deputy Controller Stowers. So we are currently beginning that legislative proposal process, and we will start to develop those legislative proposals over the next month and then begin to bring forward a legislative proposal package to the board for the board's consideration in the November and December timeframe.
Does that include the alcohol beverage tax program, specifically taxpayer deadlines?
We've heard some. We're currently looking into that, but I don't have any firm language or any suggested changes, at this moment.
That's all I'm at. Just want to make sure that it's on you guys' radar.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And kind of along those same lines, I have kind of a related request, specifically as it relates to your weekly legislative update. I know the governor signed several affordable housing bills recently that impact the BOE, such as AB 345, which deals with accessory dwellings units and separate convenience, and then SB 591, which addresses senior citizens intergenerational housing developments, and the Housing Accountability Act. And then SB, I believe it was 728, which dealt with the density bonus law, purchase of density bonus units by nonprofit housing organizations. And I'm wondering if we would include more bills addressing affordable housing in your weekly update going forward, since that is clearly an important topic of interest of the board as it moves forward, especially along its nexus with the BOE's jurisdiction.
Yeah, so thank you for those questions and comments, Chair Vasquez. I'm happy to review the legislative universe of bills that are currently out there, and I'm more than happy to add any bills related to affordable housing that have nexus to any of the programs administered by the Board of Equalization.
I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Seeing and hearing none, I want to thank you again for that update. And ask Ms. Taylor, do we have any comments or questions, written comments on this topic?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check if there's any assessors on the line that may want to weigh in on this legislation, including Prop 19?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there are any assessors who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're an assessor and would like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. We have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Can we check with AT&T if there's just any public comments from any of the folks listening in?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone in the public who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no public comments at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call our next item.
The next item is K5, Taxpayers' Rights Advocates Office's report, an update on the activities of the Taxpayers' Rights Advocate Office. This matter will be presented by Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. I'm Lisa Thompson, Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I'm here to provide you with an update of the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office to keep you informed. I'm pleased to share with you some statistics on the number of cases that were completed by the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office last month in September, and to provide some insight on the types of those cases. In September 2021, we completed 17 cases. 5 were in Board Member Gaines's district. 4 were in Board Member Cohen's district. 3 were in Board Member Vasquez's district, and 5 were in Board Member Schaefer's district. Of the 17 cases completed, 5 were in the administrative category and 12 were in the valuation category. The administrative category includes topics such as creating and mailing of tax bills, refunds, penalty cancellation, defaulted taxes, access to data, special assessments, or direct levies on a property tax bill. The valuation category includes topics such as change in ownership, declines in value, appraisal methodology, exclusions, exemptions, new construction, enrollment of values, general property taxation, and assessment appeals. With respect to the administrative category, 3 cases involved defaulted taxes and 2 involved access to data. The 3 cases involving defaulted taxes were all where the taxpayers due for the fiscal year were not paid prior to the end of that fiscal year, June 30th, of which 2 of those were in the power to sell status because taxes had been defaulted for more than 5 years. In the 3rd case, the taxpayer had entered into a payment plan with the tax collector's office for defaulted taxes, but missed making a payment. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office assisted the taxpayers by providing information about when a taxpayer can enter into a permanent installment plan for defaulted taxes under the law and explain what must be done to redeem their property before a county tax sale. Generally, after taxes have become delinquent for more than 5 years, a taxpayer can no longer enter into a payment plan with the tax collector, and to avoid the property being sold at a tax sale auction, the taxpayer must pay all of the back taxes and penalties and interest. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office also helped the taxpayer understand that a missed payment payment in an installment plan results in termination of that plan, but under certain circumstances, a new plan can be entered into depending on what year that default was in. For the cases involving access to data, both involved requests for property ownership information made to the assessor's office. In one case, the requester was concerned because the assessor's office would not provide recorded ownership information to them for numerous properties they were interested in buying, and were confused because some of the properties that were listed on the assessor's online system had a notation of BOE, which the requester thought meant that that was owned by the Board of Equalization. The second case involved someone trying to obtain information on certain parcels, and the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office explained that assessors do not publish the names of owners online due to confidentiality reasons, and that grant deeds could be obtained from the county recorder's office. And after communicating with the assessor's office regarding certain parcels, we explained to the taxpayers that those parcels found online with that county notation of BOE meant that they were state assessed properties. And the reason that certain properties could not be located on the assessor's online system parcel lookup feature was because they were owned by a local government agency and therefore non-taxable. So we explained to them how to look up the assessor's maps online, and that it might indicate what county agency owned a particular parcel since it had a large amount of acres. The TRA office also helped the taxpayer understand the property tax system and the separate functions of the recorder and the assessor. the assessor responsible for assessing taxable property in its county, and the recorder for maintaining recorded documents on property and ownership. So I'll move on to the valuation category. With respect to the valuation category, and it's 12 cases in total, 2 cases addressed partial change in ownership, 3 cases addressed exclusion from reassessment, which pertain to base year value transfers, exclusions for persons age 55 and over. 2 cases pertain to the welfare exemption, 1 pertained to the disabled veterans exemption, and 1 pertained to correction with the remaining assessment appeals. And then the remaining 2 actually pertain to general property taxation. The change in ownership cases both dealt with parent to children and the grandparent to grandchild exclusions, which did not result in reassessment, but then partial reassessment occurred later when a sibling transferred their interests to another sibling. In both cases, the TRA office provided information on the various property tax rules and laws pertaining to the transfer of interests from a sibling to another sibling, and explained how transfers can affect property assessments because there is no exclusion for such transfers without the benefit of the previous exclusion being continued from the parent to child. The TRA office also helped the taxpayers understand how the portion that was transferred was reassessed at market value, while the portion retained by the sibling kept the existing factored base year value. So we provided a chart demonstrating how the assessor calculates that blended value. For the cases involving base year value transfer exclusions for seniors, those over 55 and over, the TRA office explained that since the sale and purchase of the properties occurred before Proposition 19's effective date of April 1st, 2021, that Proposition 6090, as codified in Section 69.5, applied rather than the provisions of Proposition 19. In both cases, the market value of the replacement exceeded the market value of the original, so they did not qualify for the base year value transfers under prior law, Proposition 60 or 90. In one case, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office also explained that even if the market value of the replacement had been lower than the original, it would not have qualified for a base year value transfer because it was located in a county that had not adopted an ordinance accepting base year value transfers from other counties. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office also helped the taxpayer understand that that one of the purchase or sale transactions must occur after April 1st, 2021 to qualify for the base year value transfer provisions under Proposition 19. And that merely filing a claim for exclusion after April 1st did not mean it qualified for the new base year value transfer provisions of Proposition 19. With respect to the 2 welfare exemption cases, in one case, the personal property that was owned by a nonprofit organization did not receive exemption due to mistaken reporting. And for another case, the assessor's office could not grant exemption to the organization's property because it had not yet been issued an organizational clearance certificate. So our office coordinated with our agency's property tax department to obtain information on what was needed in order to issue the organization to issue the organization an organizational clearance certificate so that they could proceed with the assessor's office and have them grant exemption. In both of those cases, our office coordinated with the assessor's office to expedite the processing of the welfare exemption, claim filings, and to grant the exemption. For the disabled veterans exemption case, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate actually coordinated with the taxpayer so we could understand the information about the escaped property tax bills that they had received. The taxpayer understood that it was for the removal of the disabled veterans exemption, but the taxpayer felt that it was an assessor's error. So the taxpayer rights advocate coordinated with the assessor's office to obtain information about the circumstances of the exemption removal. The TRA office then explained to the taxpayer, who was a disabled veteran, that the assessor had removed one of the two disabled veterans exemptions on the property because they had been recently informed that the taxpayer's spouse had moved out of the property several years before. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office provided information on the disabled veterans exemption laws, and that household income and information on occupancy must be reported on each year's exemption claim form to qualify for the low income portion of the exemption. Our office also helped the taxpayer to understand that they could submit a revised exemption claim form in order to get the low income portion rather than the basic, and that the assessor was able to go back and increase the amount of exemption up to the statute of limitations for refunds. And for the case involving the assessor's enrollment of value and subsequent roll corrections, the taxpayer had concerns about the property tax, the property's base year value and the time period under which corrections could be made. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office explained the provisions of Revenue and Taxation Code Section 51.5 that allows for assessment roll corrections, and confirmed that corrections can be made without going to appeal before an assessment appeals board. Our office explained that if an error is due to an assessor's judgment, that error can be corrected within 4 years of July 1, for which the base year value was first established. However, any correction is subject to the cancellation of refunds within the statute of limitations on refunds. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office also provided resources to those taxpayers, such as statutory provisions and BOE legal opinions, to assist the taxpayer in understanding the assessor's position on the roll corrections. The assessor did agree to process roll corrections. And so for the assessment appeals case, the taxpayer was concerned about the property being reassessed after the property was inherited from a taxpayer's father and wanted to appeal the base year value for a change in ownership. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office helped the taxpayer understand the appeal process to dispute a base year value. We also explained that an assessor's office could later grant, if they had later granted the parent-child exclusion, that a roll correction would be made with refund issued. Additionally, the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office guided the taxpayer through navigating the tax collector's website in order to pay taxes online, and where to find the assessment appeals application on the county clerk of the board's website. And finally, for the general property tax case, we help the taxpayer understand California's property tax system and limitations of Proposition 13 for increases to the factored base year value up to the maximum of 2% a year and 1% and the 1% general property tax rate. We also explained that there are certain types of exemptions available to persons based on income, such as the disabled veteran exemption, that changes to allow further exemptions would require a constitutional amendment and statutory changes. The final case concerned appraisal methodology involving a taxpayer that reached out to the state controller's office with concerns about the property tax history of a property and assertions that they hadn't been able to find anyone to help them. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office reiterated the previous information that had been provided to the requester and explained that the requester and her family no longer own the property. We reviewed our office's previous analysis and provided information explaining that the assessor's actions were appropriate. And now to provide some additional insight on the workings of our office. For one of the welfare exemption cases, a large nonprofit organization in the Bay Area that provides meals to seniors was not given exemption on its personal property at a new location due to confusion about reporting obligations. At this location, an affiliate of the organization that owned the real property was the organization that used the personal property. So it was unclear to those organizations which organization must actually report that property on the business property statement filings made with the assessor, and which organization must claim it on the welfare exemption claim. So our office coordinated with the assessor's office and discovered that the nonprofit owner did not claim exemption at that specific location for that personal property. So they were unknowingly taxed and subsequently issued a delinquent tax bill. So the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office explained to the taxpayer that owns the personal property that nonprofit organization must be the one that claims the exemption rather than the nonprofit that actually uses it. And that also on the property statement filings for each organization, they should report property that is owned by them and be reflective of where that personal property is located if they have multiple locations. The Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office had coordinated with the assessor's office, and it quickly granted exemption and processed a rule correction. Expediting this claim was particularly important because the nonprofit organization receives funds from the county, a different agency, and that granting agency was withholding funds until the outstanding property taxes were paid. Actually, in that county, the tax collector's office has a function in distributing funds that have been approved by other city and county agencies. So they don't release those funds to organizations unless they're current on their property tax bills. So that concludes my update. If you have any questions, I am happy to take them at this time.
Thank you. I see a hand from Member Gaines. Go ahead, Member Gaines.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez, and thank you, Ms. Thompson, for that presentation. And it's exactly what I want to hear in terms of, I know these things are going on, but when you share it with us as board members, it's really helpful because it gives you a good idea of the type of cases that are being handled by you in the taxpayer advocate's position, taxpayer rights advocate position. So when I heard the case about the disabled veteran and being able to help him out, that was awesome. And then the same thing with that senior food program. It's exactly the sorts of things that we ought to be doing. I did have a question for you. You had mentioned a statute of limitations, I think in reference to the disabled vet. And I'm just curious, did you say that was 4 years? I'm trying to get clarity on the statute.
Yeah, generally the statute of limitations is 4 years.
Okay.
Rule changes.
All right, very well. Well done, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kudos. I've seen so much that you've done in my area with a lot of especially the nonprofits. And I see several hands up now. But let me start with Member Cohen, and then we'll go to Vice Chair Schaefer, and then I see Ms. Stowers. Go ahead, Member Cohen.
You don't say your
Thank
name.
you very much. And
And don't forget to mute your mics, folks. I hear background and some other. I'm sorry, Ms. Cohen, go ahead, Member
Yeah,
Cohen.
thank you. I apologize if that background noise is coming on my end. So I just want to first thank the executive director, and I really want to acknowledge the hard work of Lisa Renati, excuse me, Lisa Thompson, wrong Lisa, Ms. Thompson, as well as the BOE staff. I mean, this hard work on behalf of taxpayers should not go unnoticed, and I just want to exalt this and exemplify this as really good work. Congratulations, Lisa. You did a fantastic job. It's clear that this year, in particular, has presented a great number of challenges for taxpayers as well as the staff. And one issue that keeps coming up is the request to provide administrative relief for taxpayers who face or who have faced compliance deadlines that are contained in the statute or in the state constitution. And on May 6th, the governor issued the executive order to extend the deadline to pay property taxes that was due on April 10th. This deadline to pay property taxes without incurring, you may recall, without incurring a 10% penalty. It's been extended through May 2021 for taxpayers that were impacted by COVID-19. Also, in this executive order, the governor extended the annual filing deadline for a business property tax statement. This is Form 571L from May 7th to May 31st for businesses with personal property tax exceeding $100,000 in value. So upon the request of the Board of Equalization and county assessors and the California Association of Clerks and Elected Officials, the California State Association of Counties, and other stakeholders, the governor extended the deadline for Assessment Appeals Board to complete their official acts until January 31st of 2021. Other tax agencies such as the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board have extended compliance deadlines as well. Excuse me. Clearly, the unique impact of COVID-19 presents an opportunity for all of us to seek new and creative solutions for taxpayers who's been deeply affected. And we've heard Senator Gaines take some pretty strong positions on making sure that we're providing relief for taxpayers. And I join him in that. It's in the spirit that providing relief for the taxpayers that I suggest that we as a board, excuse me, ask the executive director to review constituent comments about the impacts of COVID-19 on taxpayer compliance deadlines, particularly deadlines which cannot be extended because they are state law or in the Constitution. Specifically, I'd like to suggest that our board ask the executive director to review whether language can be prepared to extend deadlines contained in the state law, and also language for corrective state constitutional amendment to provide taxpayer relief. I think that these statutory revisions and or state constitutional amendment could provide one-time COVID-19 specific, I'm not saying it's for everyone, COVID-19 specific extensions of deadlines for taxpayer compliance. Pardon me again. So this review request that we are making of our executive director should be for all deadlines that have been extended and for those deadlines that have not yet been extended. So I know this is a trite thing to say that we must, quote, think outside of the box, but I think that we need to expand our thinking on COVID-19 relief. Indeed, we should not think about taxpayers impacted by COVID-19. They're not permanently boxed in by existing statutory and constitutional deadlines. So again, just to wrap this all up, I'd like to ask that the board members join me in this request. Again, this is specifically asking ED to review language that can be prepared to extend deadlines contained in the state law. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Schaefer. Vice Chair Schaefer, are you ready or?
Is somebody looking to me?
Yes, I thought you had your hand up. Or maybe
Oh,
you
I
did.
withdraw that. I was getting in a debate off camera with my staff on a procedure matter, and so I withdrew that. I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
I
All
try
right.
to keep it off muted.
Ms. Stowers, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. I want to make two comments, one regarding Ms. Thompson's report and one regarding Member Cohen's request. As far as Ms. Thompson's report, like all the members did an excellent job. You are providing some great information regarding what type of issues are coming across your desk. I especially want to note that your office is a full service office. I take note that you provide assistance on tax issues that are outside of the BOE's jurisdiction, mainly the tax sale issue that you talked about and the recording issue. So thank you for just not closing your door on those constituents and providing the service and the assistance that they needed. Kudos to you and your team. My other comment is regarding Member Cohen's request about asking the executive director to review deadlines and compliance issues based on what's coming across the advocate's desk. Haven't we already done that under K1D? Status reports and options for COVID-19 impact on property tax deadlines. And isn't that why we're looking at or discussing changes to RTC 155 and the government code and possible changes to the statutory amendments to the Constitution? I said that in reverse order, but I think Ms. Cohen.
Yes, we are doing that. So does that mean we can't do that, what I'm suggesting?
Yeah, so is that a separate assignment, or are you just restating why your original assignment was important?
Restating the and emphasizing it, and also highlighting Lisa Thompson's work, and so just pulling it all together, making it tight.
Okay, so you're not asking for us, the director, the ED, to do something else?
No, I was asking. I don't. The request that I was making, I don't think is too far of a departure of the original request. So, if you're pushing back and think that that's not the case, then I'm open to that. But I was just thinking it enhances it.
I'm not pushing back. I guess I am pushing back. I don't want to overwork our executive director. And
so I think
she's doing it.
Well, the reason why I spoke up in this particular section is because it's an update on what the Taxpayer Advocate's Office is doing, and what I am asking is for the executive director to look at this, language. I think what I'm hearing is my request duplicative.
Yes.
Give me a second and I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
And I can also add to Member Cohen, we have shared with the executive director information, on past contacts from taxpayers in this area, because as well as the property tax department. I mean, during the COVID situation last year, we're still in it, of course, but from last year, at least when it came out, we heard from taxpayers, many taxpayers, on issues that they were having, and not being able to meet base year value transfer deadlines, the 2-year transfer deadlines, filing of property statements, paying of tax bills. So that's definitely at the limelight. And so I'll be happy to reach out to the executive director and see if she needs some additional information. But I think most of it is covered by the memo, at least the areas on the issue paper on what is being considered, because those were kind of the impacts to taxpayers. But I'll be happy to take a look at that. And if there were any other, contacts that we received from taxpayers, in different areas for extensions that were, impacted by not being able to meet some sort of deadline, then I'll be happy to, provide that information. So thank you for that.
And also just to add a further clarification, to Ms. Stowers, there may be other issues that the TRA office has received from taxpayers on an ongoing basis. And we're still in the COVID. We're still in COVID, and other issues could emerge from taxpayers. So I believe that continual review is a good thing.
Okay, it sounds like we're all on the same page here. I was going to just ask if Brenda was on the line to see if I think it's pretty much understood, but let me hear from our executive director if she thinks this goes above and beyond what we've already pretty much asked her to do.
Good morning, honorable members.
Good morning.
Just get a little.
I think you're muted though. We can't hear you, Brenda.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I sound like a commercial. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
It's okay.
So members, thank you for the discussion. I appreciate the dialogue. If I may first pause just to acknowledge what our taxpayer regs advocate, Ms. Thompson, has presented. It's a really, really good information. It absolutely is a reflection of the quality of her work. Your kind words about her work and the work of others is greatly appreciated. So Ms. Thompson, kudos to you. I think to restate what I heard is, and maybe I can just add a little bit of a different dimension to it. So first of all, in terms of our process, we work as a team, and so anything that comes through the Taxpayer Rights Advocate's office is a part of the input into all that we look at. We look at the input from a process perspective for any work that Ms. Thompson needs to do in terms of taxpayer education and outreach, but it's also, we take that information and include it in our considerations for any policy adjustments. We also take that into consideration for legislation. So it's a body of it's data, basically, and input, another channel of input into what we do. So as Ms. Thompson has indicated, when information is coming across her desk, she does inform me, but it's a part of our internal discussions as we prepare for legislation and proposed items for the next calendar year. So that's a routine process for us. As it relates to the specific deadline extensions related to COVID, as Ms. Thompson said, and I agree, the material that was in the issue paper from the August discussion is a broad brush that does also help with some of the taxpayer deadlines and other deadlines that are being discussed as part of this discussion and will be discussed more tomorrow under the property tax deadline extension. For the edification of all members, we do have a continual review process. Us taking a look at the needs, adjustments, either legislatively, policy, process, et cetera, all of that is reviewed by the managers in each group, including Ms. Thompson's group, Mr. Young's group. All of our groups review our material on a regular basis to always look for those continual improvements and to identify any gaps. We can't always bite them all at one point, right? So we can't boil the ocean. So we do work from a list of priorities. But we absolutely do look at where else can we help, where else can we offer services, where can we improve our services, and where can we identify gaps that maybe we've not seen, or maybe we just need to shore up some things. So that's a part of our continual process. As Dustin, Mr. Weatherby, mentioned in his presentation, we are preparing our package for the 2022 legislative calendar. That information is going to be presented to you as board members at the December meeting, which is our annual process, and that's our annual time frame for coming to you to present them to you, have discussion, and then get your approval to proceed with the package. So as I'm meeting with you between now and then, I'm happy to talk to each of you to say if there's anything else that you're interested in. It would be helpful to have that information presented so we can agendize that, any additional ideas at the November meeting, and then we can take a look at any additional items and to be included on our December legislative package for the 2020 calendar year. So I think we've got it covered. If I'm hearing what Ms. Cohen is saying, I think we've got it covered. But again, there's always going to be something new that we might revisit and reconsider. Just as one final footnote, as we're implementing Prop 19 and continuing with COVID, we are getting new information on a regular basis. So in the executive office specifically, along with the support services, as we're getting additional information there too, we are going to always may come back to you at some subsequent points to add other items that are just newly being discovered. So even though we're submitting this package for legislation, for the 2022 legislative year. We'll present that again in December. That's not our final bite at the apple, right? So I just want to clarify, you do have other timeframes. For your reference, and Mr. Weatherby, I'm sure covers this with you also, the legislative deadline for bill introduction, for statutory bill introduction for the 2022 cycle is February. So not only will we have time there, but we do have some wiggle room and some space to try to continue the conversations with the legislature. So you still have a little time. So December is not the final. We still have until February of 2022 to offer some additional legislation, because I'm sure you're going to be getting much more information as you continue your conversations with taxpayers in your districts. You may hear more from your assessors in your breakout sessions later today. So our ears are always open and available to assist you in this area. So thank you. Hope that answers the questions, members.
Thank you. I see Member Cohen, I think, has.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Fleming, I appreciate that clarity. And also, I might have jumped the gun a little bit because the board is going to be considering proposed statutory and constitutional issues tomorrow in the K1D.
Yes,
And so I'm just excited and looking forward to 2022 and making sure that we continue our review and really be particularly responsive to taxpayers. And, you know, the obvious is that we don't know where COVID will be. And I do think that we need to be prepared for the long game, hence why we are still meeting virtually. So thank you for the clarity. I hope, Ms. Stowers, we've kind of cleaned up my requests. I can pull it back some. Thank you.
Your excitement is well noted, and we'll move forward from that. And let me just check if there's any other comments or questions of Mrs. Thompson's report. If not, Ms. Taylor, do we have any written comments on this item?
Chairman Vasquez, we do not have any written comments.
Can we check and see if there's any assessors who may be on the line who wish to speak on this?
Certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there are any assessors who would like to make a comment on this matter?
If you're an assessor and would like to make a comment, please press 1, then 0 on your touch-tone phone. We have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, can we check if there's anybody in the public who may wish to speak on this?
Yes. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Members, with that, it is coming up on noon. We will take our lunch recess and reconvene. It's my understanding we have assessors ready to reconvene with us at 1 p.m. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Executive Director, but we're to log off of this, and then when we log back on, we'll be logging on to a different link. Is that correct for the assessors meeting?
That is. Thank you, Chairman Vasquez. Members, as the chair just indicated, once we adjourn this portion of today's meeting or recess this portion of today's meeting, if we could ask you to log out of the existing Teams and environment that you're in. You'll have a little lunch break today. Yay, for those who get actual lunch break. And then if about 5 minutes before 1, if we can ask you to go to the second meeting invitation on your calendars, specifically for the annual meeting with the assessors, you'll use that second meeting invitation to join the afternoon's public meeting with our assessors. So we appreciate your cooperation on that. I'm available if you have any questions.
And moving forward, I see a hand from Vice Chair Schaefer, but just to kind of clear it up in terms of the logistics. So we'll be logging off of this. We'll log on to the separate link on your calendar, and then we won't reconvene this meeting until tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. on our other link, Teams meeting, correct?
That is correct. You'll go into the public meeting, which will last about 90 minutes this afternoon, the public meeting, using, again, the meeting that's on your calendar. Well, the chair will adjourn the annual meeting with the assessors around 2:30. At that point, we're done with the meeting for today. You, as individual meetings, will have the opportunity to have small group discussions one-on-one with the assessors in your respective equalization districts. And members have a good rest of the afternoon. And then we'll see you tomorrow a little bit about 9:30 to get ready for the 10 a.m. meeting tomorrow.
For our online meetings.
Vice Chair Schaefer, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, Chair Vasquez, this is the longest lunch break I think I've ever known for online meetings. Enjoy.
I think you're correct. And it's only because we're waiting. We told the assessors to come on at 1 because we weren't sure how quick or how slow we were going to move this meeting. But thanks to all of you, we were able to expedite this pretty rapidly. But I also see another hand. I believe it was from Member Cohen. Did you have a question, Member Cohen? Oh, okay. So we will go ahead and recess this meeting and go ahead and log off, and then we will reconvene with the assessors at 1 p.m. But make sure you go into your calendar and click on that separate link. There's another link for that meeting, and it won't be this one. And then we'll reconvene this meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Seeing no hands or questions, then we will all, well, I guess we won't see, well, we will see you at 1 with the assessors. And then once again, we'll see everybody back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Thank you for your patience and for your diligence on this. With that, we will sign off for now.
Great.
Thank you, members. We appreciate your support.
Thank you all. Enjoy your lunch. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see all these faces. And I know it's a little bit challenging still because we're not able to do this in person, but this is the next best thing. But welcome, everybody, to all the assessors and staff that have joined us today for this annual meeting. With that, let me have, if I can have Ms. Taylor, please call the next matter here.
Our next item is AA, Annual Board Meeting with County Assessors. This matter will be presented by Chairman Vasquez.
Thank you. Members, this brings us together here, and thank you all for joining us for this 2021 annual board meeting with county assessors is now called to order. Ms. Taylor, if you would please call the first agenda item.
Our first agenda item is 1, greetings and introductory remarks by each board member.
I will open it up and then turn it over to the members, my members. First of all, greetings and thank you all. Welcome everyone, and thank you all for participating in the 55th annual Board Assessors meeting. It's been 55 years since the legislation was passed in 1966, requiring us to meet. Although assessors and board no doubt met frequently for years before that, I want to recognize Assessors Association President Ernie Dronenberg for his outstanding leadership this year and extend a hearty welcome to Leslie Morgan, the President-elect, for her leadership in 2022. And a special thank you goes out to the CAA Legislative Committee, led by Chair Jeff Prang and Vice Chair Bob Dutton, who I both see on the screen here. I know that you've worked very hard to get legislation through the process for COVID-19, for the time extensions, Prop 19 implementation, and a wide range of other matters affecting property taxpayers throughout the state. Thank you for your efforts on those challenging propositions, as well as rules and legislation that's been moving forward. I personally am looking forward to this meeting And I am hopeful that we can forge ahead in 2022 with the projects that are still in progress and our collaborative efforts that are going forward, emerging some of these issues that we need, that needs really our attention. And with that, let me ask and see if for the first order of business, really out of respect to the assessor's time and brevity of our meeting, if Ms. Taylor would please call the public comment on this item to discuss after the third agenda item, if we could. With that, members, I'd like to turn it over to my vice chair, Mr. Schaefer, for any opening remarks, and then I'll look to the other members as well. Is Vice Chair Schaefer there? I think you're muted.
Now,
Okay.
yes. Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to say hello. I look forward every year to meeting with our assessors. I'm very proud that the assessor president this year is our own Ernie Dornenberg. I remember when I was elected in 18, our first full year was 19, and we met in person with all of the assessors in Sacramento, and I treasure that opportunity as a baby official to meet those who are long in tooth, and I always learn something from them, listening to their discussions and reading all the materials they provide us. As the time goes on, I have not been able to join for lunch, you guys, like I do get out normally, and I miss that. Good to see Bob Dutton and Peter Aldana, and enjoy Robert Menville, who hosts me to a rodeo out in Imperial County, and I enjoy seeing Claude Parrish, who figures out he can spend up to $5 on treating me to lunch, so he can go to a burger place. I do hope if you have any thoughts on our procedures, do you want to share with me? I will take them up, because all of us want to make our operations more efficient and more informative. And thank you again, Chair Vasquez, for introducing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I will turn to Member Cohen. Do we have any of the members? Member Cohen, go ahead.
Oh, yes. You know, I have remarks.
I know you
Hello,
do.
everyone. It's so good to see you, everyone. Very excited to be here. Mr. Chair and colleagues, just want to take a moment and just acknowledge that it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome everyone here again to our county assessors, to our annual joint meeting. And first, I want to acknowledge and recognize Assessor Ernie Dronenberg for his leadership over the past year as president of the Assessors Association. He is indeed a friend and someone that I have come to grow very fond of. Not only is he very stylish and dapper all the time, but he's incredibly knowledgeable about the business that we're in. I also wanted to say that I've welcomed his wisdom, his guidance, his counsel, even when it was unsolicited. You know, Ernie gave advice even when I didn't want it. But that is the sign of, I think, of a good working relationship. And he has never led me astray. I'm also pleased to welcome President-elect of the Assessors Association, the Honorable Leslie Morgan from Shasta County. Hello, Leslie. I saw you earlier. It's good to see you again. Welcome. I'm looking forward to developing a strong relationship with you, as I did with Leslie Davis and as I did with Ernie Dronenberg. So this is really a stellar group of folks that are volunteering a lot of time in serving through this Assessors Association. So we will be working very closely together. And I also, as we all know, 2021 has been a very challenging year. We say it all the time. It's in your real life as well in your personal life and your professional life. This pandemic is continuing, as well as the challenges facing the state and local government. We've been working our best to work through them, but there's still some tweaks that we need to make. Despite the challenges, we've worked together to provide consistent taxpayer services, and I think that's something that we share, that we should all be most proud of. In particular, assessors have worked with the challenges of supporting remote workforces and dealing with many technical challenges that have arisen as a result of the pandemic. And I just want to say here publicly that we recognize your work, we see you, and we thank you for rising to the challenge. And each of our 58 county assessors had to respond in his or her own way based upon the circumstances in each county. And 2021 was also the year that we all worked collectively to implement Prop 19. And we also work closely with the assessors' offices to provide legal guidance through memoranda and letters to the assessors. And the California Assessors Association, with the able leadership of Assessor Dronenberg and the assistance of BOE, of our staff, have crafted the statutory language that now has become a part of Senate Bill 539. And you may recall 539 was authored by Senator Bob Hertzberg, and then it was enacted into law. And I think this was a very big effort. It's monumental, quite honestly. It demonstrated the cooperation among the assessors, among the Board of Equalization, and the legislature. So what I'd like to say is that in going forward, we at the Board of Equalization are committed to working with each assessor's office and making sure that you have the resources, the guidance that you need to ensure that the technical compliance with Prop 19, that it happens. And looking forward, during the upcoming year, I am looking forward to continuing a dialogue with you all to ensure that that you have the additional resources that you need to address ongoing personnel and technology challenges. So ultimately, you can survive. You can succeed on providing the best possible taxpayer services humanly possible. You have our support, you have our gratitude, and finally, I'd like to recognize that there are going to be some challenges in addressing the unique, difficult valuation challenges. In this regard, I'm a strong advocate for additional Board of Equalization resources. I want to make sure that we're utilizing retired annuitants and other temporary assignments from assessors' offices. I want to make sure that we are developing resources that can assist you when needed. So I will say we appreciate your diligence and your commitment to California, and I'm looking forward to our conversation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Gaines.
Yes, I just wanted to thank the assessors in this opportunity to catch up and see how we can help as the BOE. It was great seeing some of you up at Lake Tahoe area. I guess it's called the Palisades now, right? It's not Squaw Valley any longer. Palisades at Tahoe. But yeah, so I'm very excited about working with you, understanding the issues that you're having. A few of the things that I'm sure some of us will discuss have to do with assessment backlogs, personnel recruitment and retention, disaster relief. There's been a lot of fires in my district. So we're going to have to figure out the proper valuation of that property, remote appeals hearings, and BOE training, among others. So very excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stowers, do you have any opening remarks here?
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. Good afternoon. On behalf of Controller Yee, welcome to our annual meeting of assessors and the Board of Equalization. As elected officials, Controller Yee understands that your past 18 to 20 months has been a challenge. Just like Controller Yee, each one of you rose to the challenge to keep government operations moving forward. Now that we are hopefully moving out of the COVID-19 pandemic, I look forward to hearing your goals and priorities for 2022 and how we can work together to achieve something great. Thank you all.
Thank you. And with that, members, let me turn to Ms. Taylor, if she would please call our second agenda item here.
Our second agenda item is 2, opening remarks by the California Assessors Association, recap of 2021 and priorities for 2022. The speakers are Honorable Ernest J. Dronenberg, Jr., President, California Assessors Association and San Diego County Assessor Recorder Clerk, the Honorable Leslie Morgan, President-elect, California Assessors Association and Shasta County Assessor Recorder. The speakers will also discuss 3 sub-items: A, COVID-19 impacts, current status and remaining items to address; B, appraiser workforce, current recruitment and training status and looking forward; C, technology issues and needs, options for future funding.
Thank you. Members, just a friendly reminder, when you're not speaking, if you would just remember to mute your mics so we don't get any of this feedback. With that, thank you. In order to make this productive as possible, I really encourage both members and the assessors to fully participate with the questions and comments as Assessors Dronenberg and Assessor Morgan lead the discussion. Please feel free to raise your hands so we can recognize you and hopefully make sure that our transcriptionist is capturing who's actually speaking. So with your patience, we would really appreciate that. And if I could just have, I'm sorry, if I can have Assessor Dronenberg and Assessor Morgan, are you available to begin?
I'm available. Tony, you want
I hear Ernie back there.
Yeah.
I'm here as well.
Great.
Okay. At our annual meeting of CAA on October 27th of last year, our president, Don Gagel, talked about how COVID-19 had changed the lives of men, women, families, employees, and the public, and how when he walked into office in January, he expected none of this. But we went through COVID-19 and we came out with new ideas, new ways to handle problems, and new challenges in connection with virtual government. We are now in the era of virtual government and remote government, and hopefully an era of change that's positive and efficient in the way we do business. How we rose through that challenge and how we are going to deal with 19 was probably decided by December of 20, but then all of a sudden change, which is represented in the economics by a triangle, is Delta. And what happened? We hit Delta and the game started all over again with the Delta change and the COVID-19. But COVID-19 was not the whole thing. We had some major problems that we had to face after the passage of Proposition 19. We dodged a big bullet, I believe, by the good news is that Prop 15, the split roll, was narrowly defeated. That was so ill drafted, it would have been a very, very difficult for us and the Board of Equalization and the Franchise Tax Board to administer. So it might have had worthy goals, but it was a real tragic bill if it had passed the people and put into our Constitution. The bad news was that Prop 19 narrowly passed, which brought us to trying to figure out how to put together corrections to the initiative. Anytime, of course, we all know when you put something in the Constitution, the cleanup legislation, as one of our assessors has always told me, Tom Bardinero, you can't fix a bad bill. So this bill, this proposition has some bad parts, and we tried our best. The good news is that we put together a committee with the Board of Equalization as a big part of it through our chairman, Jeff Prang of the Legislative Committee, and the help of Brenda and Moon and Tony and Tom and all the staff of LA and San Luis Obispo to come up with 539, as was mentioned earlier. 539 in its drafting was great. That was the good news. The bad news is the author, Bob Hertzberg, he agreed to help us, but then the bad news was the Farm Bureau and the retailer, the real estate folks had problems with the fix. So now we're left with a basket that we have to try to untangle and make into workable language for a new bill. And now we have started as recently as last week working on some changes for the 539 that was put through the legislature and signed by the governors. In general, last year was a dodgeball game. All year long, we had bills that changed, and one even changing our election cycle. And we managed to get through all of those bills and come out with a pretty clean record. We had some outstanding success in the legislature thanks to our lobbyist, Rob Glassglasser, who did a fantastic job along with others to get 539 finally through and kill some other bills that were very bad. And that's why I come to the words of a dodgeball game through the years. We have now put together a successful team for 2022. And Leslie's going to talk about some of her areas that she wants to focus on. But I wanted to sort of conclude by saying in my over 40 years of experience of working between the board and the assessors and the general public and the tax professionals, this has been the best year of hard work, hours after hours after work. That didn't seem to make a difference what the hour was. I can remember being on the phones with Tony, with Brenda, with Mr. Moon, with Jeff, all working to achieve that 539. That was really a heavy lift, and we finally made it. But not because of anything short of a lot of extra work. And I'm really proud that we did that together. So I want to now turn it over to Leslie, and she can talk a little bit about next year, and then we'll comment on COVID-19 and workforce and technology after that.
Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable members of the board. I'm Leslie Morgan, Shasta County Assessor Recorder and the incoming CAA President. As the CAA prepares for 2022, we are hopeful that the recent trends of in-person meetings will continue and expand opportunities for us to gather again for discussion and sharing of ideas. And yet we realize that we've found that there are multiple ways to bring people together. I mean, look at this group right here. Aren't we together? One thing the last couple of years has taught us is how to adapt. The association and counties adapted to a rapid change, yet we found efficiencies in the way we do business along the journey. As we move forward, those efficiencies will help us as we implement Prop 19, catch up on our assessment appeals workload, and continue our assessment processes with the number of sales increasing and the potential of increasing numbers in new construction after the passing of SB 9 and SB 10. In addition, 2022 is an election year for assessors. We will have announcements of retirements to celebrate and new assessors to embrace. We'll be looking to our retiring assessors for their nuggets of wisdom as the next tier of assessors become mentors. Discussions of the past merge with what the future holds. Isn't that the underlying question we all navigate with in-person versus remote, and how that affects every aspect of our business? The assessors will be a full year into the implementation of Prop 19 next year, putting into operation tracking procedures and reporting processes, all while we continue to break down the new rules and apply them to the individual transfers. The administration of legislative ideas is where the hard work comes in. None of us could successfully implement these changes without the efforts of our staff. Our California Assessors Administrative Services Association, or CASA as we all know them, and your BOE staff recently put on a Prop 19 Intergenerational Transfers WebEx and another one on the base year transfers. Those CASAs had between 900 to a little over 1,000 attendees each. That's a lot of training for our staff. Thank you. Got to get my page turned here. My history with the CAA always seems to bring me to the highlights and the accomplishments of training. The BOE staff has created so many additional opportunities for assessor staff. This has allowed us to onboard staff quickly and be able to transition staff more easily between assignments by presenting BOE training materials and incorporating that with our internal hands-on training. Moving into next year, we know that these tools will continue to support and enhance our goals for staff within our offices. Thank you to the hard work of your staff. I know there are way too many to mention, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to thank Brenda Fleming, David Young, Patricia Lumsden, Lisa Thompson, and Glenna Schultz for the years of support in education. And what lies ahead of us includes the continued efforts to establish a Leadership Institute training with the involvement of the California Assessors Association, the California Association of Clerk and Election Officials, the County Recorders Association of California, and the State Board of Equalization to address the fundamental need to train local government managers on the critical skill needed to not only manage, but to lead. The CARES Leadership Institute team will be working hard in 2022 to complete the program for a launch date in 2023. Of course, we are expecting next year to have some potential initiatives such as the Repeal the Death Tax Act, which looks to remove the restrictions put into place by Prop 19 on intergenerational transfers. But I guess we'll just have to navigate those waters as the waves come in. The CAA Executive Committee looks to 2022 with anticipation for all that is ahead, the known path and the twists and turns from the unknown. Our Education Committee will be providing our staff with training, our Standards Committee keeping us all in the realm of consistency, and our Legislative Committee keeping an eye on the changes coming our way. I look forward to the year ahead, and I look forward to continuing the efforts of President Jonenberg and our predecessors in the CAA. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for your comments. I have 3 questions that I would just like to propose to not only the leadership, but any assessors on the line. And then I'll open it up to other members if they want to ask questions as well. My first one is kind of centered around the COVID impacts. And I'm just wondering to the leadership as well as the assessors, if they've noticed any types of property where there were noticeable declines in value, for example, on certain commercial properties or entertainment properties. Is that surfaced anywhere? Ernie, I think you're muted.
I would encourage every assessor that's on the line to think about and participate in this question. I don't want to take them all up, but that there's certainly for the small business restaurants has been a very big impact. And the COVID shutting and opening and opening and shutting, and then the establishment of in-the-street restaurants, and now the retracting of those things, they all have gone to add additional cost and improvements that are not really improvements because they're just temporary. So that's one industry that we're looking at real closely right now for Prop 8 adjustments.
Board Member Vasquez, this is Paul Dictos. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, yeah. Good evening, good afternoon. Yes, shopping centers, 2 theaters, I brought them down by about 60%. And some of the commercial properties, having a hard time. Of course, all the restaurants are half empty right now. I just came from one that used to be impossible to get into the lunch hour, Right now, there was about 20 people, I don't think some of the small businesses will ever make it. And of course, churches are down. I go to the church, it's down by about 50%. People got used to staying home and also shopping over the internet, Amazon is booming, but the local retail stores, I don't know what's going to happen this Christmas time to the biggest shopping center we have here. It's going to be empty. So there's going to be a lot of write-downs, a lot of Prop 8. We're going to lower the values. And I hope we're going to get enough money to really support our staff here.
Thank you. Thank you for your input. Anybody else?
This is Jim Rooney in Amador. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
First, I have to ask, how's your golf game?
It's hanging in there.
Good. I appreciated you coming up to the Northern Conference, and we had a nice time there. But in a small county,
it was a great event. Thank you.
Yeah, it was real good. In the small counties, we had a movie theater. It's done. They're trying to figure out what to do with the property. They're thinking about gutting it and finding another use for it. But the thing that people have gotten used to is people have learned how to shop online. And a lot of people found that it is really simple to shop online, get what you want, get it delivered quickly. And this has resulted in a very high vacancy rate of commercial properties. And I think that even businesses that didn't shut down, those commercial properties are going to have to be revalued just because of the amount of vacancies that we're seeing on main streets in small towns. And in some cases, I'm thinking there's a 30% vacancy when in the past we were expecting a 5% vacancy. So this COVID of shutting down businesses, I think, has permanently hurt commercial properties because it has encouraged people to shop online. And maybe it was going to happen anyway, but this sure brought it about pretty quickly. And I think it's really kind of a tragedy because those businesses, a lot of them on Main Street, there is no other use for them. And these will be permanent vacancies in the hearts of these small towns. And it's really too bad that this had to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. We've kind of experienced that here in my area, and I wasn't sure if that was something that's happening throughout the state.
Oh, it is. I think it is happening probably throughout the state, but it is very harsh in small towns. Very harsh.
Member Gaines, I see a hand up there.
Yeah, I just want to thank Assessor Rooney for those comments, because I think a shift is occurring within our economy, and it was accelerated as a result of the pandemic. And I think the shift is occurring to online, right? And so a lot of things are happening faster than they would have if we didn't experience the challenges of the pandemic. And I think, this has been an issue that we have discussed, I think, really since the beginning of the pandemic. And of course, we're always working in arrears in terms of valuation of property, but this is going to be a big issue that we're going to have to address. And I think Assessor Rooney's comments are spot on. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments from any of the assessors?
Yeah, this is Bob Dutton from San Bernardino County. One of the big challenges they're having right now, even the businesses that are trying to reopen can't find employees. And part of the problem is that in our generosity as a society of providing assistance to the people, we've created a disincentive for them to actually go back out into the labor force. Now, we've noticed that in a lot of different areas. And so somehow, starting at the federal level and actually working its way through Sacramento as well, we're going to have to change this and create an incentive for people to come back to work, because even some of these businesses that are trying to open, they can't, because they just can't get the workforce to come in, because it's actually more cost effective for people to stay home and collect benefits. And as long as they keep extending it, and we saw a little bit of this back a few years ago when they extended unemployment benefits. I remember my daughter was first starting to work in the banking industry, and she actually had.
You muted yourself by accident, I think.
I was talking about my story about my daughter, was talking about work this a few years ago, but when they increased the unemployment benefits, they actually had people leaving the banking industry to go collect unemployment benefits because that was more fun than working. So somehow we've got to reach a balance here and create an incentive for people to come back to work.
No, that's a good point. I've been hearing that from a lot of small businesses in town here. I didn't realize that many of them were actually making more money staying home than going back to work.
One of the things that we'll talk about too is the challenges that we're all having trying to staff our offices in some cases, and we'll talk about that later because I know that's a focus on this. But we're not immune to it, and us trying to find people who want to make a career out of being property appraisers and things like this. There's some real challenges that we're going to have in the next few years. So.
Thank you. Anybody else out there? Oh, Member Gaines, go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to interject. I think there's a lot of things happening simultaneously. You've got baby boomers that are also retiring, and a lot of them, I think, got fed up during the pandemic and just decided to retire. And then I think you've got a lot of Gen Xers who are, I think they're more oriented about a good quality of life. And if they're not happy with the job that they were in, then they're just quitting. And, you know, if you have an infusion of extra cash, you can kind of sit on the sidelines and wait until you get the job you really desire. And so I think there's a lot of different things kind of happening at the same time, all started by the pandemic, economic shutdown, and then incentives. And I think the incentives were valuable early on, but I think it's really exacerbating all these supply chain issues that we're having, because there just aren't people in some of these key industries to move the product. And so it's a real fix. And it's going to be interesting to see how we get out of it with inflation accelerating, also because of the lack of supply caused by supply chain issues and labor issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other assessors out there?
Chairman Vasquez, this is Dave Stottlemyre with Inyo County.
Welcome.
Thank you. I want to echo, everything that's been said so far has been devastating on Inyo County. And you throw in the fact that we're going through a software conversion. We're very understaffed, as Assessor Dutton pointed out, with filling positions. You throw in the fires that have been going on, the people that have been displaced, the droughts coming up. There's just a ton of issues hitting California, period. It's not going to be pretty for a long time. I had an accounting practice before becoming the assessor in the private sector, and I know from firsthand experience that once a business, and I'm looking at my position here as running a business in a way, once you get down in a hole, you can get down there really quickly, and it's going to take 3 or 4 times as long to get out of that hole. It's not a quick recovery. So again, in a small county like Inyo County, which is pretty much nothing but small mom and pop type businesses, it's going to be ugly for a long time.
Thank you.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Larry Stone in Santa Clara County.
Welcome.
Thank you. I think the next normal, I don't call it the new normal, but the next normal is what we're learning from everything, all the excellent comments that have been made, is that the pandemic is having some permanent impact upon real estate in particular, but a lot of other industries as well, that aren't going to come back to the normal that we knew before. One of the things that is not necessarily immediate, but I think it's important to think about, and that is boomers are retiring. People are looking, assessing their lives and their careers during COVID a lot differently, and they're looking at they're being more selective as to going back to the old job or the old industry that they were before. But baby boomers grew up in families of 3 to 4 children each. Demographers tell us that millennials have 1.2 children per family. And so as more baby boomers retire, there's a void here. And it's clear that in the future, and not so far future away, we're not being able to 1.2 children per family, and the Gen Zers, who are the children of millennials, will probably have less children and less families put together. A lot of people living separately. That we're not going to be able to replenish our workforce. So if we think we have it bad now because people are not taking jobs that are available, 10 million jobs open today, what's it going to be like in the near future when we're not producing enough people to fill the jobs that are going to be there when we can't fill them today? And I think that the only answer and the biggest answer is people from outside the country. And I'm not talking about people coming across the border necessarily, but people coming from other countries to take jobs that'll be available that we will not be able to produce people to fill them at the time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from some of the assessors here?
Mr. Chairman, this is Fong Law from Alameda County.
Welcome.
I wanted to follow up with what Jim Rooney and Larry Stone said in terms of the change in the business climate. Jim mentioned that Main Street is becoming vacant. Most small cities are losing their property tax revenue base. And the BOE has a unique role in that we as assessors treat companies that have embedded software. So we're looking at Amazon, FedEx, DHL that ship these goods. They have all asked for significant reductions in their warehouses and in their factories for embedded software. Now, if we're going to play the public policy role of shifting some of that necessary tax revenue from Main Street to some of these companies that use the infrastructure that are paid for by tax revenue, such as our roads and our bridges, should we continue to provide for embedded software discounts? And if so, what is that discount? Because in all of my appeals for embedded software, I've never been able to come up with a definitive way of figuring out what that is. And I don't know if my other colleagues have that issue in their counties in terms of companies appealing based on just embedded software and asking for significant discounts in their BPP. But that is something that at least in my county, I could use a lot of help in, because we don't know what direction the legislature and what the BOE would like to see. The other part that I would hope that the BOE can help with are some of the depreciation schedules for a lot of the equipment that we're talking about. I gave proactive reductions for about 6,000 businesses in my county for COVID-19 for their BPP. We based it as a percentage of their time in which they were forced to shut down due to our county's government mandate. Right? Government restricted the business, thus the BPP was reduced in value, and that was the position we took. I know that I don't know if that was what every county did. I know some of my colleagues did something similar, and I hate to put Jeff Prang on this hot seat, but we started off using an LA County approach to that. Now, having said that, there was a lot of equipment in that list where we thought the depreciation schedule should have been different. That some of that equipment depreciation schedule was set by the Board of Equalization surveys. For instance, semiconductor equipment, other food manufacturing equipment, right? We stuck with the BOE guidelines on it, but we thought internally some of those should have changed over the years. And that's not something that we control or we have the resources to do. So I just wanted to throw that out there. There are a lot of people at the BOE who are a lot smarter than I am, and I'm hoping that they can help us figure that out. So thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else out there? Let me pose another question, and some of you kind of hit on it a little bit in terms of technology, and I'm just going to put that out and see what others feel, especially, and I'm thinking of some of the smaller counties. You know, we've heard each year that not all counties have the resources to create or expand their e-forms. I was impressed with LA County, Jeff Prang, the way they were able to put, I think it was like 111 forms that are now fillable on Cal Assessors e-forms on their websites. And I'm wondering perhaps in 2022, if we can discuss with the CAA options where counties could possibly share some of these e-forms throughout the state. I see a hand on number 41. I'm not sure who that is.
Well, it's probably me, Mr. Chair, Leslie Davis, Calaveras County.
Oh, Leslie, yes, welcome.
E-forms is actually a joint effort between the California Assessors Association and BOE. And not all counties have participated, but the Board of Equalization does. And it's really helped us with maintaining our forms being up to date according to BOE standards. And it's taken out one of those pesky little recommendations in the county surveys that come out every 5 years. So at least from my perspective, I think it works well. I've long believed that e-forms should be pushed out by BOE and the counties should simply deal with it. But that's not exactly how it's gone. We all have however many forms we actually use out on our websites.
Thank you.
Before I shut up, I do want to acknowledge Assessor Bob Dutton and his team for the effort that they have put into e-forms, and before them, our shared services were handled quite aptly by Dan Goodwin in Ventura County.
Thank you for those comments. And I see a hand from Dan Goodwin. Go ahead, Dan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Just to piggyback on what Assessor Davis said, yes, the assessors worked together for quite a few years now, and Board of Equalization, I don't know the exact number now because I don't manage the account, but I think puts in about 20,000 a year towards the forms that are shared. So there's over 80 forms right now. If you go to if you go to the Ventura County website and you look under forms, you would be able to pull up 80, maybe it's 86 forms. Mr. Dutton's office might have the specific number that it currently is available. But we're in good shape. All assessors are invited to participate. Most do. So that particular issue's, I think, been pretty well addressed, and it'll with technology, I'm sure it'll get better. But I know this year, with Prop 19 coming in, I had a clerical person make a recommendation about the difficulty for some of the people that would call in to find the right form for Prop 19. So we took the 5 or 6 forms that were specific to 19 and made them a link on the front page of our website. And so those kind of modifications are available to assessors as well. If I may speak just a little longer, I actually want to go back to the value question you brought up.
Sure, go ahead.
A couple things to keep in mind when it comes to the assessments under the coronavirus situation. First of all, for all assessors, the data value is, and for all appraisers, data value is always key. And for assessors, data value is the lien date. So whatever type of property it is, if there's going to be a Prop 8 adjustment because of decline in value, we look at what was it on January 1st, right, of each year. And so that was January 1st of 2020 was very different than July of 2020 or August of 2020 or September, et cetera. And and then the same with by January 1st, 2021, there were issues with property types that had totally changed their market demand picture. For example, a golf course. During the early part of 2020, golf courses were shut down, but then most local health officials figured out that golf was an outdoor sport. It was not too hard to manage, and by lien date of 2021, most golf courses in Ventura County certainly were very, very busy. So the thing to keep in mind is lien date is critical to what an assessor does about a valuation decision. Next point I want to make is fundamental to appraisal valuation is it's the present worth of future net benefits. Okay, it's not on lien date 2021, how did they do in July, August, September of 2020? It's what's the present worth of future net benefits. And so that's the assignment of an appraiser, is to make that analysis and a value calculation. And then the other thing I was going to bring up is location is very important. Clearly, there's locational influences that substantially influence how our properties, how is property retained value or not retained value, and the other is the business model of each property. And so, for example, an In-N-Out hamburger is not the same as a Denny's restaurant when it came to service throughout the last year and a half. So anyway, just want to put those comments out there, remind the board members that those are critical elements for an appraiser in determining value under any circumstances and all circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned two. You mentioned lien date, and the other one I didn't quite hear. I wasn't clear. What was the second one?
Lien date is the date of value, and then the next one, actually there's 4 items I brought up. Lien date, which is the date of value. Number 2, what are appraisers expected to calculate? Are they expected to calculate historical activities or the prior year? Or are they estimating value as the present worth of future net benefits? So in other words, present worth, today's value, the moment of date of appraisal value of what is the anticipated future net benefits to that property. So, and then the third item was location. There's obviously locational issues are substantial. Not all of California is in the same locational influences. And then the fourth one was the business model of the property.
Thank you. Anybody else out there?
I think we have Mr. Vice Chair Schaefer with his hand up.
Oh, yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
Yes, Senator Assemblyman Bob Dutton mentioned all the attractive issues that benefits that are going to people, making it doubly difficult for us to hire whoever we want to do for whatever. Our Leslie Morgan, our new president, mentioned next year is an election year. I have a question. We have 58 of us as assessors. How many are we going to lose next year through retirement? I only know Mr. Dronenberg. Can we look forward to maybe 57 of the 58 returning, or are we going to have more seats to fill than Mr. Dronenberg? Does anybody know about retirements other than Mr. Dronenberg?
Oh, there will be lots of retirements. I expect there always is, but probably given COVID and the length of time a lot of assessors have served, that one of the benefits of working for government is a very attractive pension systems that oftentimes, particularly in unionized counties like my own, the retirement age gets younger and younger as each contract is negotiated. So there's some attraction for retiring. That doesn't mean that it actually affects my staff more than it affects, I think, assessors. But normally there's a dozen assessors or so, I think, that retire out of 58. That's pretty low turnover rate. I'll bet it's be higher this time.
Could I ask if we expect these great benefits that are available to the unemployed are going to maybe reduce the number of applicants to run for assessor? We're going to have a little problem finding candidates. It's too comfortable out there.
Well, you don't find that in large counties very often. There's always people willing to step up. I don't know about the small counties. Large county assessors are becoming more political, the jobs, than they were when I first was elected. Most assessors during the old days, and still is true, but less so, grow up professionally in the assessor's office. You know, they start out as a low-level appraiser or low-level auditor. They work their way up. They become the assistant assessor. The assessor retires or dies, and they're in a prime position to run for assessor. That typically was how people became the assessors in the old days. People like Bordenero and Dutton and myself and others have come from the outside. Fong and others have come from the outside directly into the assessor's job. And you're going to see more and more of that, I think, for a number of reasons.
Yes. Well, I know in the early days of politics, the residential requirement was a year or so, but today it's only 30 days. So anybody who is in one county and takes a liking to another county only has 30 days residence to deal with in order to be a candidate. So that would help us attract the best people available. Thank you.
See a hand up from our president, Dronenberg. Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Schaefer, I'd say that there's always some of the people that are retired, not at their own wishes, too. So.
But I can tell you this, and I did a little research in the almost 27 years now that I've been the assessor. There's been 402 elections for assessors in the 58 counties, 402. About 70% of those assessors generally, and this is a general statistic, run for re-election. In the entire 26 years, only 4 assessors, incumbent assessors, have ever been defeated out of 402 elections, and something like almost 300 assessors running for re-election. So it's a pretty safe position.
Do you have any statistics for Board of Equalization candidates?
I do not, but I could get some, but I don't know if I'd like to do that.
Thank you.
I see a hand up from our president-elect, Leslie Morgan. Go ahead, Leslie.
Okay, I was just going to touch on a couple of these ideas, the way we're kind of experiencing it here in Shasta County. So I just closed yesterday a recruitment for our entry-level assessor recorder specialist, and we had 13 applications. This is a recruitment that we used to get in the 90s range. We had just done another recruitment and we had 21 applicants, narrowed it down, and we hired 3 from that list. We did that recruitment just like a month ago. One thing though that I'll say is that even though we used to have 90 applicants, it wasn't that we had 90 great applicants. You know, we still narrowed it down and got down to the point of having, you know, kind of 5 really good qualified candidates and maybe another 5 to 10 of trainable people. So I'm not necessarily complaining about the quality and that cream of the crop aspect. Those people seem to still be applying to some extent. But in a county like Shasta, the biggest thing we're struggling with is the pay, the county level pay. And our county is getting ready to do a countywide survey in terms of how much our pay is comparable to others. And we know that even like in my own salary, they had done a salary survey a year ago, and my position was determined to be 34% underpaid compared to comparable counties. So if you take that and you expand that out into the rest of the staff, when my starting pay is 16 cents over minimum wage, you know, and you compound that by the items that Larry hit on in terms of the generational aspect, you know, my grandparents all had 15, 16 siblings. My parents all had 3, 4 siblings. You know, we have 2 kids. And there is an element of that coming into the workforce as well. There's just less people applying. Our county's not paying as much. I mean, in a perfect world, I would believe that it would be nice if the property tax system covered the cost of administering the property tax system before those funds got distributed to the other agencies. That's what would give us all the ability to fund our offices, whether you're a small county who's trying to figure out how to implement the efficiencies of technology, because the only way we survive is by implementing technology. We're doing more work with the same or less people. We couldn't get through that without some level of technology to help us through it. And then, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with our housing market in a county like Shasta, where we have Prop 19 transfers coming in. You know, we have potentially more retirees, and they're competing in the market of our housing areas. So our subdivisions that were our kind of nicer subdivisions, kind of the upper level, upper quality, those markets are booming more and more because people can come from these 3-bedroom, 2-bath housing units and come into our nicer subdivisions and bid up the market. And so our own staff are seeing issues with the housing market. I mean, you know, we all know that that's something that's impacting everyone in some way or another. But when our pay isn't keeping up with that, it's really hard for our local citizens to be competitive in a market that's impacted by other outside influences and influences that aren't as restricted with the items we're seeing like here in Shasta County, because, you know, we tend to lag behind, but our housing market is booming right now and our incomes of our citizens aren't. And in the meantime, it's really hard to attract candidates in to our workforce when we're not competitive.
To extend what Leslie is just saying, you know, there's some trends here that I think it's important for the State Board of Equalization to be aware of. You know, there's a lot of, in the last 15 years, we've had 2 major recessions. One was a lengthy one. That's the Great Recession in 2008 through about 2015. And the current one, we're in the COVID recession, which could last less than 24 months if we don't run into more variants. But people confuse these two recessions. A lot of taxpayers, and I think others as well, elected officials, try to compare the Great Recession in 2008 with the current COVID recession. They're completely different. The 2008 recession was caused by subprime mortgage credit fraud. So it was primarily a residential recession. Easier for assessors to deal with because residential property is easier to appraise. It's based upon comparable sales and so forth. The COVID recession is primarily, and what Leslie just said, the residential markets are very, very strong, record levels in Santa Clara County for all types of homes. But this is a commercial recession where, as people were talking about, movie theaters, restaurants, things that were permanently closed, and they didn't close because of economics. They closed because they were ordered to close, and ordered to close essentially for more than a year. And commercial property, as everybody knows on this call, is much more complex and complicated to assess because it's based upon information that we need from taxpayers, where residential appraisals are not that way. So it is going to be much more difficult. Fong hit on this as well. Much more difficult, complex, costly, time-consuming, and all those things for us for the assessors to work our way through a major recession. The only benefit or upside to it is it's a relatively short recession, or it would be. We had the quickest and deepest recession in economic history with the COVID recession. And then we had a rebound or recovery that was about the fastest. And now we're kind of flattened out because of the variant, the Delta variant. So that's just something to look ahead for. And the board's going to hear more about problems assessors are having in recovering from a commercial recession that we didn't have a lot of problems doing, except maybe for economics with the previous recession.
Thank you. That was all good input. Let me just move on to our next agenda item, if I can get Ms. Taylor to call that up.
Certainly. Our third agenda item is board member input and next steps for addressing 2022 priorities. The speakers are board members, with Mr. Vasquez opening the discussion on sub-item A, Welfare and Low-Income Housing Exemption Improvement Project, status, timeline, and objectives.
Thank you. Once again, to make this as productive as possible, I encourage members and assessors to engage with any questions or comments in this discussion of low-income housing exemption impacts and any other issues for 2022. Once again, please feel free to raise your hands. I'll try to see as many as I can on the screen. If not, just call out and we'll make sure we identify you so we know who's speaking here. But moving forward on this whole low-income housing exemption, I issued a memorandum attached to this agenda proposing that we work together to review the recent affordable housing legislation and develop some guidance. The housing shortage is critical. In fact, one bill, AB 215, which was opposed by 260 cities, authorizes the Attorney General to bring an enforcement action against any local government that doesn't adopt policies and laws that make it easier and faster for people to build new housing. The main purpose of the 31 new housing bills signed by the governor is to do just that, make it easier and faster for new housing to be built. Several of these 7 bills in my memo relate directly to the welfare exemption. Others relate to it through financing incentives, and others have change in ownership or change in use impacts. Local agencies will need our advice. Homeowners interested in ADUs need answers, and developers leasing surplus school districts properties, affordable homes, or emergency shelters need answers, mainly on the welfare exemption, but also on possessory interest, documents to submit, forms to file, deadlines to meet, and tax consequences. So my goal today is to request board and assessor support to develop a plan for a public policy hearing on this subject in January of 2022. The board has supported it in our May 25th meeting, and we identified 3 possible topics. The first one was the challenges and hurdles of welfare exemption for affordable housing, to examine applications and appeals of the organizational clearance certificates, supplemental clearance certificates process, and whether the state is receiving the broadest public benefit from these exemptions. The second one is the challenges and hurdles of assessed value issues such as deed restrictions, possessory interest, and new construction. And the third would be the examination of recent legislation and emerging issues. All low-income housing stakeholders would be invited to participate, local agencies, financing experts, and developers, so that we can get a thorough picture from the experts. And I'd like to have a basic plan ready for the board's review next month, if possible. By way of background, I asked David Young, our Deputy Director of Property Tax Department, to speak briefly on the department's white paper on affordable housing and property tax relief, and our improvement project to streamline the board's exemption process. David reported that it takes 6 months or more to complete our part before the assessors engage. So he's looking at every possibility to make the process more efficient, from simplifying forms and instructions to educational videos. If Mr. Young is available, I'd like to have him share some of those comments and thoughts with you.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Vasquez, honorable members of the board, and honorable assessors. This is David Young here, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. I am available and I'd be more than happy to share some of my thoughts. So in July of this year, Property Tax attached a paper to our public agenda notice, and it was the Affordable Housing and Property Relief white paper. It is an expository white paper that dealt with affordable housing. We gave some introductory background as to how it's developed, and what kind of, in general, what the scope was in California. But more importantly, we looked at how it basically intersected with the programs that the board administers. And on top of that, the very top of that list was with the welfare exemption. As you well know, the welfare exemption is co-administered by the board and shared with the assessors. We basically issue the certificates it takes to say that that organization is actually eligible, and the assessor takes it from there and actually determines whether that specific property is being used for a qualified purpose, and then thus they are granted an exemption, or basically a not taxed for, or partially exempt or fully exempt from property taxation. So when we went ahead and looked at how our program, our issuing of these certificates were being handled, we found pretty quickly that with low-income housing, not only do they have to get basically organizational clearance certificate, but they also have to get a supplemental clearance certificate, and that is very specific to low-income housing. The supplemental clearance certificate is specific to a development. So you may have a developer, they may have 5 developments, they would need a supplemental for each of those developments. When we took a good look back, we pulled up about, not quite, but almost 5 years worth of data. We found out we issued a little over 1,400 of these supplemental clearance certificates, and some of them indeed took quite a while to process. And when we dug a little deeper into it, a lot of the delay was that the filings were either incomplete or incorrect. So we have since then started our internal review to make sure that with that delay, the up to 6 months of waiting for documents, is we tried to figure out how much of it we actually helped with. Were there any efficiencies that we could find? So we took a look at our application process. We actually provide a checklist for applicants to take a look at, so they know what kind of documents are being asked for them to submit. We took a look at our filing, our form in which you need to file, in which you need to fill in, file in order for us to start the processing. And we have taken a really good review and look at it, and we think we can find some efficiencies there. So we have redrafted some of it. We're right now in our internal review process. That is the first stage of our program, of our internal review. After that, we'll move on to looking at our actual processing. How are we handling those documents? What are we looking for? And is everything that we're looking for a necessary element? And then lastly, the last step of our process in this streamlining is we will be looking at our approval process. How is it that we are approving them? Is there a speedier way to do so? Are there ways to concurrently review things and approve things? So this whole process it's for us, we've scoped it out. It's going to be a long-term project. We're going to look at our guidance. We're going to look at our internal procedures, and some of it we may have to visit once or maybe twice, but our goal is to finish up at least the initial review and the drafting probably in the first or second quarter of next year, and then the whole thing. We're right now, very tentatively, we're looking at a year from today, so it's about 4 quarters for us to finish through. So that is what we're doing with our SCC certification, our supplemental certification process right now. It is under review. We're looking at the whole process from top to bottom, and we're looking for any efficiencies we can find, with the goal of having the applicant be able to turn in their applications earlier, have it be more complete, more error-free, with all the necessary documents, what is needed and only what is needed, and our process in reviewing and approving, or in some cases denying those. So that is what we're embarking on right now.
Thank you.
Of course, back to you,
Thank
Chair.
you, Mr. Young. Members and assessors, let me open up this.
I hopefully might be able to make a slight comment.
Yes, I want to just open it up now to you all, and because I really value your ideas and support moving forward with this public policy hearing, and love to get your thoughts and ideas on how we could hopefully help local agencies and property owners meet some of these housing demands we have.
Well, I'm going to be very, very brief and to the point. Mr. Shaw, are you on the line as well? As you know, or you probably don't, the county paid 19 of my people big bonuses to leave. So I'm really short. All throughout, it's bad. And so I did get the roll closed on time, but we're now trying to hire new employees. It's very difficult, and a lot of the employees aren't as sophisticated with, shall I say, accounting background. We're having a tough time. So what I would like from the Board of Equalization is some help, if possible, because I have been informed that now we're going to go to all online training. And I will flatly state out that online training isn't as good as in-person training. It's just not as good. There's no two ways about it. And so in my instance, I know a lot of other assessors probably lost staff as well, but I'm particularly critical in my position. So I'd like Mr. Shaw to talk a little bit, and if there was some way, because what we have to do is we have to buy 19 laptops and to train them. We can't put them on the main system because, these are new people. We really don't know them. And it's a big problem that we don't have in-personal training like we used to. So, Mr. Shaw, could you follow up, please?
Yeah. Hello, Neil Shaw with the Orange County Assessor's Office. And I also have Mike Hanna with me. He's the Division Manager for Rural Property. And Mike and I were just talking right now. Our fail rate's gone up, and I believe other county offices have also noticed that some of our fail rates have increased with our long-distance learning module. Before, when the BOE came out, we were able to get in-person training, and especially on Course 5, which is one of the harder courses and advanced appraisal classes, we've noticed that it's been a challenge learning long distance, and some counties have gone, the bigger counties have started to do their own training. They have their own in-office. The BOE has certified their instructors to be able to teach their own staff, and I believe LA does that. And I want to say Riverside and maybe another county also has been doing this. So that's one way around that. If BOE doesn't have enough people to train, perhaps they can certify some of our instructors to be able to train our staff. And I think I've concluded my comments, Mr. Parrish.
Thank you so much. And we would hope for some sort of a response, please, or maybe in the future a response or whatever the chairman or members of the state board might think about our request, please. Thank you. That concludes my statement.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. Anybody else?
Getting back to the agenda item, I applaud the BOE for their efforts in streamlining the process for granting or not granting the exemption for affordable housing and in handling the BOE part of that. Anytime we can streamline any government process, but one so important is to try to get to more affordable housing, it should be recognized. The biggest impediment, however, comes, I think, before the BOE. Most the impediments to affordable housing and more affordable housing, which if we don't solve, will be the crisis of California eventually. The impediments are outside the domain of assessors and the Board of Equalizations. The impediments are financial and entitlements. And until this state amends the CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, which was well intended at the time to make sure development was properly met, proper environmental standards, is used today to stop development by people who are opposed to affordable housing in their communities. And that's precisely the reason the state legislature is removing what in the past has been exclusive determination over the entitlement and over land development. And they're removing it with respect to certain types of housing because the local government, and I've been a mayor and a council member, have miserably failed to provide enough housing, both affordable and worker housing in this state. And so more and more will be transferred to the state legislature, which, on this issue is probably a good thing, but in the long run, it removes local control by local governments.
No, that's a real good point. Any other? Well, actually, I see a hand. There was a hand by Member Gaines.
Yes, and Assessor Dutton.
And Assessor Dutton. Okay.
Would you like, yeah, I have to agree with Larry that the challenge, I worked on this a lot when I was in the legislature as well. And plus professionally, I was in real estate for 50 years, dealing in multifamily and affordable housing issues. And the problem that this state has with affordable housing isn't making more affordable housing, it's how to make housing more affordable. You know, that's the problem. The regulatory expense to building a house, you do one shovel of dirt. There was a study down in San Diego County, cost them like $170,000 before they even turn one shovel of dirt. Okay, and in California, only less than 15% of California's land mass is available for the development of residential anyway. So, I mean, there's some real other problems here that are bigger in scope. The problem I have with the exemption issue is because the services that are required by the people that live in this quote unquote affordable housing don't go away. You still need money to provide services in the way of law enforcement, fire protection, emergency medical services, and all those things combined. And including our little portion of the property tax that we get for our budgets, you know, it's just, that's what's wrong with the way they're going about this. They're just, it's a worthy project, but they just won't deal with the reality of what the problem is. And so I applaud you for trying to figure out the way we could expedite our process, but it's not going to solve the problem. I can tell you that. At least that's my 2 cents worth.
I appreciate it. I see, I think was it Leslie Dutton also? Or no, I believe it was our
we
president.
have Dronenberg and Mr. Rooney.
And Mr. Rooney. Okay, go ahead.
I agree with both the prior speakers, but you know, I really applaud David's group for doing something. A lot of people talk about it and they don't do something. And then you get a piece of legislation like SB 9 and SB 10, which, you know, totally takes control out of local government. Excuse me. That's where what's all about is local government. That's who should have control because they're closest to the people. And to arbitrarily make a change like that, you know, and to couch it in the terms that it's going to create more housing is just, it stinks. That's the best word I could use on this program.
How's local government worked for us, Ernie? It's totally failed to provide affordable housing that we need.
Well, the legislature is not helping with things like SB 2.
I would agree with you, but local government has failed to provide the housing that we need in this state. And so the legislature, frustrated, I guess, I don't know, but very frustrated, says, if you guys will not do it, we will do it. And in the long run, I don't think that's good for the state, but it will produce more housing.
Hey, can I say something about that housing? Like I said before, the problems between the larger counties and the smaller counties, sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. In this case, they're kind of the same with the price of housing, but in a smaller county like ours, we have much less expensive housing than an Orange County or a Santa Clara County. And we have the state legislature mandating that all new housing has to have sprinklers. Okay, now that's going to add $15,000 to a house. They mandate we have to have, all new construction has to have solar panels. Here's another $25,000, $30,000. Sure, local government maybe hasn't done enough, but the state with these mandates is exacerbating the problem. I would love some of you to say, have the legislature stop putting these mandates on additional costs for housing. They're saying the housing is too expensive. It is. And then they mandate that it has to be more expensive. They're working against themselves. And I don't have a direct line to any of the legislators, well, one or two of them who happen to be Republican, who aren't able to do very much. But God, they are absolutely working against themselves. And I don't know if they see that. When you make something more expensive, or a higher cost, it's going to be more expensive. Thank you.
Thank
Chair
you.
Vasquez?
Just real
I see one hand,
Larry.
Mr. Dutton, before you go on, I see a hand that I forgot here, and I think it's number 42. Is that Leslie Morgan? I'm not sure if it's her.
No, I think it's Mr. Dutton and Mr. Gaines.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Dutton.
Well, I just wanted to bring it back to what Larry Stone said about CEQA, because that is one of the bigger problems that we've had. We tried to set up a CEQA, and Ted Gaines may be familiar with this because I think we were working on it back when he was in the Senate with me. But they need to set up a special process. We wanted to set up CEQA courts that would just handle that specific issue, because CEQA is being abused. And it is being abused. It's being used for the wrong reasons that it was intended for. So I wanted to circle back to that, because that is one of the major problems that people are having right now with regards to affordable housing, or making it more affordable. And I too want to applaud David and his people for taking this on, because we shouldn't be part of the problem. Okay, with our little part of it, we need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, Chair Vasquez, this is Member Gaines.
Yes, go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate all the comments, a lot of great comments. And I just wanted to reiterate that I think we do need some reform in terms of CEQA. It was intended to mitigate the environmental impact of construction, not to stop it in its tracks. And so we take a look at that. We take a look at a lot of the mandates that are being forced upon housing that increases costs, like Assessor Rooney had mentioned. But I think my focus, it's all of those things, but I hope we can move forward with a policy that gives people ownership. And we've got to do it at the first-time home buyer level. And they can be small homes. I mean, they could be 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes on smaller lots to keep that cost down. Because if you don't have the opportunity for home ownership and you're aspiring to the middle class, I think you get, in many cases, you just get shut out of the ability to advance to the next economic level. And how many stories have we heard of people that are suffering as a result of the passage of Prop 19, who worked so hard to acquire their first home, want to pass it on to their children, and now they're looking at a new assessment if they want to use that as for rental income purposes. And so I hope we can keep that focus front and center. I know that people are going to have to live in apartments and other types of homes, but let's not forget the American dream and the option and hopefully the vision and hope of home ownership. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all. I think you've raised some real good points on both sides of the issue. I know as a former mayor myself, we try to do the best we can at the local level, but not all cities are willing to participate. And I think I heard it from both sides here today where, some of them are doing a great job and some are just opting out and they just don't want to deal with it. And that's why I think you have these sometimes legislation that comes out of Sacramento that I don't think is helpful, but it's trying to push the envelope to try to get more housing built. And that's the challenge. And I'm hoping when we put together this hearing, we can at least weigh in on our end of it and hopefully begin to address some of these issues at the statewide level with also respecting local control, because I think that's very important moving forward. I really appreciate your thoughts and comments on this. I think we have some real good ideas and suggestions moving forward. And I'm really looking forward, once we bring all the stakeholders together in January, to begin to address this issue at the state level here. But I understand we have a photo that we need to take here real soon, and I'm not sure who's handling that. I think it's Ms. Taylor.
Yes, Chairman Vasquez, I do believe we wanted to take public comment.
Yes. Do we have any written comment first?
We do not have any written comments.
Can we check with AT&T if anybody is on the public line?
Yes, certainly. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on these matters?
Hello,
AT&T.
this is a.
We're looking for AT&T operator.
Oh, no, I apologize. This is a Kanan Whitman, assessor for Tuolumne County.
Yes, would you like to make a comment, sir?
Yeah, I would like to make just a quick comment, especially for on the topic of home affordability in rural areas. One place that we've also been getting hit pretty hard is with the California Fair Plan and insurance rates. It's been pretty typical for homeowners to go from, annual premiums of about $1,500 or $1,200 all the way up to $3,500 or $4,000. And every time the homeowner insurance premium goes up $500, that's about $46 in annual payments. And in today's interest rates and amortization, that equals about just a little over $9,000 in home affordability and being able to qualify for a loan. And so when the insurance premiums go up $2,000, that lowers people's purchasing price by about $40,000. And I'd love to know if there's something that we can do to maybe incorporate cap and trade dollars to offset some insurance rate discounts in communities that are willing to go ahead and pass a tax to go ahead and do wildfire prevention or maintenance in that regard. And the reason why I think we might be able to use cap and trade dollars is because in 2020, the CO2 released by California wildfires was equivalent to 25% of all the fossil fuels generated from emissions in the state. That's my comment.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, do we have anybody else on the line?
Well, Chairman Vasquez, we're trying to reach the AT&T moderator.
Oh.
We could go ahead and take our photograph and then come back and finish with public comment. And in the meantime, my staff will reach out and find out what's happening.
Sure. What do we need to tell folks here on this photo?
All right, so our last agenda item is group photograph of the county assessors. So now is the time to take the photograph of the board and county assessors. For all board members and county assessors, please turn on your cameras, but mute yourself to reduce background noise. For all other participants, please turn off your cameras and mute yourself. I will count down from 3 to 1, and then at that time, please look into your camera, remain smiling for up to a minute while BOE staff captures the group photo. We will let you know when we are done. So if everyone could please turn on their camera.
It looks like we're all ready, no?
Right, so let me count down. 3, 2, 1. Please look into the camera. Thank you for holding. Continue to hold. Thank you. Continue to hold. All right, we are done. Thank you very much, assessors. Everyone can relax.
Yeah, I felt like the homecoming queen in the parade. You had to keep smiling.
Excellent.
That was the longest hold I've ever had.
Like the old timey days. We did get 6 shots, so hopefully of those 6 photos, one will be just perfect for the team. We, Chairman, perhaps we can reach out to AT&T one more time, see if there is anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment. AT&T moderator, can you let us know if there is anyone who would like to make a public comment on this matter? All right. I believe that the AT&T operator has called for comments and that there are no comments, even though we couldn't hear it here in the live version. So, Chairman, are you ready to proceed?
Yes. All right. So with that, let me just say, one, I just want to thank the members and the assessors, and thank you for this very productive, engaging meeting. It's truly been a pleasure to work with you and the rest to assure I am always learning from you, and really appreciate the fact that we were able to catch up today. And now, if there's any members or assessors that wish to make any closing remarks before we close out this meeting.
We have a comment from Mr. John Tutura.
Okay.
Chairman Vasquez, it's been a pleasure being at the meeting. I'm the longest serving assessor around, and I wanted to show you my background photo. That's the group meeting from the 1937 Stockton Assessor Conference. And I just wanted to let you and the honorable members know that I was not there.
I was going to ask if you were sitting there, but I guess not.
Yeah. Chairman Vasquez, this is Paul Dictor.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
With all the suffering we went through the last 2 years, in closing, I'd like to play my harmonica for everybody, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
You want to continue to suffer?
Thank you.
I got to admit, that's the first. I've never heard somebody close out a meeting like that. Thank you.
Well, there goes the entertainment surprise for the annual meeting.
Oh, that was supposed to be a secret, huh? But thank you, really, thank you all for your patience on this. And I just wanted to thank Ms. Fleming, her staff, especially the staff, for for her time and energy on this to make this thing happen. And I just wanted to let the public, those that might be still listening, that we will address the remaining K1 sub-items through K3, M, and N during tomorrow's board meeting session. We will now recess the meeting as we go into our breakout sessions with the county assessors. We will reconvene tomorrow, Wednesday, October the 20th at 10 a.m. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members, and thank you to our guests, the honorable assessors. Thank you all, and thank you, staff.